It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. And you've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. Good morning. You're listening to 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You just woke up in the greatest country in history. Donald Trump's your president. Let's get after it. We got a whole show for you planned of engaging discussions, critical analysis, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. We've got an absolutely jam-packed show for you today. We're going to get into the investigations taking place by ICE, Homeland Security, and the FBI as to who's leaking information about these ICE raids. Tom Homan given an update late last night. We'll give you that. An executive order on aluminum and steel tariffs. What does that mean for the state of Colorado? We'll give you the details on that. Trent England, founder and executive director of Save Our States, was testifying yesterday down at the Colorado State Capitol in an effort to get rid of the National Popular Vote Compact and Colorado's relationship to that, which would have been very interesting this last election if it was actually put into place. There's an effort to repeal that. If you remember, Colorado agrees to, in theory, if we get into the actual National Popular Vote Compact, to give our Electoral College votes to whoever wins the National Popular Vote, which would have been Donald Trump this last election. So all of you here in Colorado that voted for Kamala Harris, how do you feel about the National Popular Vote Compact now? Well, there was an effort to repeal it down at the state capitol. We're going to hear how that went. There's an effort by Michael Bennett and John Hickenlooper to protect, quote, sensitive locations from ICE raids. That would include schools, churches, places like that. Do you believe those should be open to ICE raids, or should those sensitive locations be protected? We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. George Brauchler is going to join us. He's got a great opinion piece in the Gazette. We're going to talk about the Wall Street Journal's article on the CBS video that was finally revealed about Kamala Harris's interview. Was it actually campaign interference or just general editing? And then Gino Geraci, host of Crosswalk, 94.7 KRKS, is going to join us on Donald Trump's eradicating anti-Christian bias executive order and how much of that is infiltrating the government that needs to be confronted. So, like I said, absolutely jam-packed show. Good morning, Bill. How you doing this morning?
Oh, not too bad. How are you?
We were celebrating Danny's birthday at a great family dinner.
Where'd you guys go? What'd you do?
He wanted hamburgers and hot dogs at home.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
that's
and then we played games. We played the game Chameleon. Have you ever played that game?
No, don't know that one. Guy. No, what is it? Yeah.
Where there's somebody, it's kind of like a game version of that, Among Us.
Okay.
Almost like a board game version of it.
Oh, neat.
There's an imposter.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to figure out who it is.
Yeah, we play a lot of games of those. A lot of games with those type of things. Yeah, that's fun. Those are fun. Oh, great. That's fantastic.
So it was a fun day, but we'll kick it off now with news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson,
news and comment. Hey, good morning, guys. 11 and cloudy in Denver. A little snow last night and some snow right now in the area. Expecting a high of 23, the 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, 47 set to hold talks with the King of Jordan today, the first Arab leader to visit Trump in the White House since he started his second term. Speaking of the Middle East, President Trump demanding Hamas release the rest of the Israeli hostages.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday. And if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock. And after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
Hey, how are things at the southern border? White House Deputy Chief Stephen Miller with DJT in the Oval Office.
The cartels, in fact, are enormously frustrated because they've never seen a clampdown like this before in American history. There are people who were working at Border Patrol back when it was INS in the 80s and 90s. They've never seen a day like this. That's because you've mobilized the 10th Mounted Division, the Marines, the entire U.S. military. They're erecting physical miles of barrier, temporary and ultimately permanent, every single day. You have all of your border agents pushed to the front line. They're not doing the humanitarian processing, quote unquote, that Biden was doing. They're doing law enforcement and national security. They're interdicting weapons and drugs. They're interdicting violent, high-threat criminals. And the U.S. military is repatriating illegal immigrants at a pace and a skill that has never occurred before in American history. And those who are committing human trafficking and child trafficking are being prosecuted for felony offenses, and they'll be doing hard time in jail. There's never been a lockdown like what you have implemented through your orders and vision since you took the oath of office.
Yes. Always great. Judge in Boston extending his block on DJT's buyout offer to federal employees. It impacts over 2 million federal employees. More than 60,000 workers have reportedly accepted the offer that would pay employees through September if they choose to resign. Those eloquent politicians like Senator Crockett from Texas continue screaming in the mics.
So let me tell you something, Mr. Trump. You're going to learn a few lessons from us. And I'm going to be the first one. You and your little friend off of Twitter, y'all about to find out, all right? Now, y'all know he likes to pound around with Putin, right? He's trying to turn us into Russia.
Yeah. Sounds like she's inciting violence. If she was a conservative, the FBI would have been at her doorstep 10 minutes after she got off the stage there on Monday. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directing the military to put a pause on the recruitment of new transgender individuals. Hegseth also ordering the suspension of planned procedures for current service members with gender dysphoria. An investigation is underway into a deadly Arizona plane crash, another plane crash, involving this time a jet owned by Motley Crue lead singer Vince Neil. A Learjet coming from Austin veered off the runway and crashed into a parked Gulfstream jet. One person was killed. Neil was not on the plane, but his girlfriend was hospitalized. The Aurora City Council is implementing new public comment rules to try to limit protests that disrupt meetings. The council voted 7-3 Monday to adopt the new rules. A public comment period will start 45 minutes before each regular session of the council. Aurora residents will be allowed to speak first. A man accused of shooting and killing a man in Denver has been found guilty by a jury. The Denver District Attorney's Office announced the conviction of Gregory Snell on Monday. Investigators say Snell shot 40-year-old Benjamin Williams on Christmas Eve in 2022. Snell was convicted of second-degree murder and aggravated robbery and will be sentenced April 1st. Authorities in India are not in love with the sound of Ed Sheeran. On Sunday, the singer gave a street performance, but it was shut down by local law enforcement. According to the Times of India, it was because The Shape of You, that's the name of the song, the singer didn't request permission. In a video, you can see the police interrupting Sheeran's performance by unplugging his instruments. And then different performance, but they turned it off. In India, news brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio. Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Nuggets blow out the Blazers last night, and Luka Doncic in his first game with the Lakers, 14 points in the victory for LA as the NBA celebrates because they want everyone to watch the Lakers. 10 degrees in Centennial right now, just a beautiful warm morning. 9 in North Glen and 11 in Denver. Be careful out there. Jeff and Billy continue on this Tuesday.
Where are you going? Why'd you hit me in public? Do you think this is how you behave? Is this what you do with your friends and family? When you get mad, you turn around and start hitting people? What is wrong with you? Who tells you this is okay?
We're off and running. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A winter weather advisory is in effect from early this afternoon through late Wednesday morning. Arctic air is going to collide with Pacific moisture. Cold today. Some fog, some flurries early in the day, highs reaching the low to mid-20s and falling back to the teens. By mid-afternoon, a steady light snow will develop. Snow will be likely tonight, lingering into Wednesday morning. Lows tonight will be single digits, highs tomorrow teens. Could see about 2 to 5 inches of new snow by early Wednesday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, let's kick it off. Lots of news to cover. If you remember, there was a big raid last week. 300 ICE, Border Patrol, Homeland Security agents, DEA was helping them out. Were seeking to round up 100 members of Trent England. After months of saying that, I still can't get it right. But the Venezuelan gangs that are terrorizing places in Denver and Aurora, and they went out there to try to get them, and lo and behold, they weren't around. And then they started going apartment complex to apartment complex to look for them. Still really couldn't find them. Ended up arresting one guy. Now, look, 300 ICE agents, DEA, FBI, it's a big show of force. That's probably going to tip off a lot of people. But there's concerns that there may be tips coming internally from the FBI. Here's Tom Homan last night.
Tom, where are these leaks coming from?
Well, look, we think it's coming from inside. And we know the first leak of Aurora is under current investigation. We think we identified that person under investigation right now. The California leak, Secretary Noem, she's correct. Some of the information we're receiving tends to lead toward the FBI. But I talked to Deputy Attorney General all this weekend. They've opened up a criminal investigation, and they have promised that not only this person lose their job and lose their pension, they're going to go to jail. They're going to criminally prosecute. So we're all over it. We got the DHS IG investigating the first one. Have a pretty good idea what happened. Can't share a lot because it's under investigation, but the IG's opened up a criminal investigation on the second one. We're sending a strong message. It's just not, giving the bad guys a heads up so they can escape apprehension. Right? We're arresting, giving, the Venezuela gang a heads up so we can't arrest them. You're putting officers' lives at risk. It's only a matter of time if we walk into a place where there's going to be a bad guy doesn't care. He's going to be sitting and wait for the officers to show up and ambush them. This is not a game. So DHS and DOJ are connected at hip to hold these people responsible in a criminal fashion.
Now, all the concerns raised by progressive activists was that the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, DEA, they're all going to be raiding these schools and hospitals and churches and rounding up, relatively innocent people and families and all this stuff. At this point, they're just trying to get Venezuelan gang members, and even that is being interrupted by leaks from within and activists. If you saw the video last week, they basically followed ICE and with bullhorns were yelling to the immigrants, "Don't open the door. You don't have to talk to them," and yelling in Spanish what to do and how to avoid and resist Department of Homeland Security, ICE, and DEA agents. At this point, he says they have identified the person. They're going to be all over it. They're going to target and prosecute. What do you think should happen, particularly if these leaks are coming from within the FBI or some other government agency, to tip off not quote unquote innocent people, families, but gang members? I mean, they're literally choosing. For instance, in the city of Denver and Aurora right now, we have 100 identified Venezuelan illegal gang members running around because somebody tipped them off to these raids that were coming. There's literally, whoever's doing this is choosing the Venezuelan gang members and their freedom over the safety and well-being of Denver citizens and Aurora citizens. And I think they should be held accountable. I love the fact that Tom Homan's going to go after them, not only go after their job, not only go after their pension, but possibly criminal charges as well for investigating. What do you think about this? Give me a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Do you believe that those tipping off the illegal immigrants to these raids are doing a moral, humane, human rights-oriented work to try to protect them from big bad ICE? Or are they interfering with the safety and well-being of the citizens of Denver and Aurora, and they need to be held to account? Bill, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I do think that they are breaking at least some rules, regulations, and possibly laws by tipping off the immigrants, although I'm not as convinced as you are that they're doing it to protect the gangs per se. Again, I have no information either way. I'm just not willing yet to draw that conclusion. They could be just tipping off organizations that there is a raid that is going to go on, and they may not know what the target is. Who knows? And I'm not convinced yet that the tip-offs are going directly to the gang members either, because the community, the Latino community, Hispanic community is fairly tight-knit. And if they're talking about ICE raids and things like that, that news is going to travel very, very quickly. And so it may not be someone necessarily tipping off the gang members. It could be someone just tipping off someone they know, going, "Oh my gosh, this is going to happen today," or "I've heard this is going to happen in this area," and then everything just spreads like wildfire. So yeah, I'm curious to see who the leaker is and what the motivation is. I do, though, however, think that if you are out there spreading information about an ongoing law enforcement activity, that there are going to be some charges there. But I'm not willing to say that they are prioritizing the gangs over the safety and security of the Colorado population, because I don't know that yet. I don't know what they are, who they are, even who they're talking to. We have no idea who they're talking to. So I'm curious to see how this progresses, and we'll see. The one thing I'm curious, though, is how come we haven't had numbers recently from the Trump administration about deportation numbers? I've looked a little bit. I haven't been, super hyper focused on it, but Blake during the news earlier played a clip from Stephen Miller talking about how this was bigger and better than ever before. But the one thing Steve didn't give us was a number. I'm just curious
I've
as to
seen
why.
Numbers related to decline in interactions that take place at the border. So I've seen in the 90s, a 90% decline in the amount of interactions that are taking place
Yeah,
at the border. But
but
as far
that's
as
not-
rounding up,
Yeah, that's not deporting the illegals, which was what Trump ran on. It wasn't, I'm going to make sure we don't have all these encounters at the border. It was, I'm going to remove all these people from our country. And I haven't been able to find a really good solid number. And the reason I'm not bringing a number to the table right now is because the numbers I've found are shockingly small. And I'm not certain that's fair. And what I'm worried about is establishing a really low number. But I'm talking ridiculously low if we talked about what we'd want to see in the first few weeks of the Trump administration. I just can't find anything that I feel is solid. And I'm curious as to why the Trump administration isn't telling us this. They did the first couple of days, but now we're not hearing anything based on numbers. And again, I'm not certain it's for this conversation here, but that I find that curious, and I'm worried about that number. That's why, again, I've seen some numbers that are really low, and if you extrapolate those numbers over the course of an entire calendar year, the deportations are shockingly low, like ridiculously low, lower than you and I would have guessed. And so that's why I'm really that's why I'm having a problem with this, because I don't want to say, hey, look, Trump isn't accomplishing this. Hey, look, there are the numbers, because I'm not certain that I have faith in them. And they're so low, they make me question them as far as this can't possibly be true. This number can't possibly be right. So I don't know. I want to know what they're doing and who they're deporting and how. But yeah, the person that is leaking, absolutely. Yes. If you're interfering with any form of law enforcement activity, whether you agree with it or not, I don't care. That's not okay.
Here is a post about the sheriff in Pitkin County. This gets interesting. So this is Aspen, Colorado. Okay. This is what the sheriff up there in Aspen is saying with regards to these ICE raids. If they have a warrant for someone, we will come and assist you. If you don't have a warrant for someone, you're not welcome, he said. If you're just doing a roundup of people, you're not welcome. And I'll go there myself personally and tell them you are not welcome here unless you have a warrant for someone. If the sheriff receives a courtesy notice that ICE or CBP intend to execute a raid or other action in his jurisdiction, he said he would weigh public interest and safety and whether or not the agency had signed a warrant. It creates a panic, creates an unsafe situation. If a federal agency is going to come in and enforce their laws, I know it sounds like I might be going against a law enforcement fundamental, but I think I'd have to notify, he said. I would maybe put something on Facebook that we've been informed that ICE is in the valley. Holy cow. The sheriff of Pitkin County. From my perspective, that's directly undercutting the work of ICE or CBP to try to deal with these illegal immigrants.
Yeah, but does he have a leg to stand on based on the idea that without a warrant, that you just don't show up into our county and say, we are going to arrest who we want to, that there should be probable cause as to why this individual needs to be removed? And I would submit that if they are an illegal criminal, or if there is some reason to move, then a warrant shouldn't necessarily be that difficult to get. So I'm wondering if he has any, leg to stand on there, that should you be able to demonstrate that these individuals need to be arrested and removed before coming in and removing them based on the assumption that they should. Is there any idea of an assumption of innocence even then? Even if they're in the country illegally, is there the idea of, wouldn't you have to at least have a warrant to prove they're in the country illegally, per se? I'm curious about that one, because I can see the law enforcement saying for all sorts of things, you don't have a warrant, you shouldn't be able to enforce this arrest, this search, this, whatever it is.
I see it as direct interference and a guy being far more concerned about living up to progressive ideology when it comes to the role illegal immigrants have in our society than actually wanting to enforce the law. If he's willing to draw the line there and say, I will notify, not just I'm not going to participate, but I'm going to go out there on Facebook and tell you ICE is coming, then Yeah, he is. He needs to be held account. Where do you fall along these lines? Feel free to give us a call. Should the sheriff of Pitkin County be interfering with ICE raids to the point he's willing to go onto Facebook and tell folks that ICE is in the valley? Or is he standing up for human rights? We'd be happy to hear from you. Phone lines are open 303-696-1971. Look, I want to talk to you about my good friend Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. He's pro-life, pro-family, pro-America. That matters because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everybody involved in the case. Dan Caplis is the son of a police officer and a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who were hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. But more than just being a really great guy that's solid on the values, who's going to stand with you and be dedicated to you, he's a real winner in the courtroom. Listen to this. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted that he is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law, a serious firm for serious cases. He accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, you can give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Awayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
The Biden administration is being called out for lying after DOJ revealed that last week FEMA sent $59 million that was supposed to be spent on disaster relief to New York to pay for luxury hotels for illegal migrants. Many now pointing to one of many news conferences where Karine Jean-Pierre repeatedly said FEMA funds were not being diverted to illegals. Listen.
And they need to stop. They need to stop doing that. So disaster relief, this is a falsehood. Disaster relief funds used on immigrants illegally in the U.S. The fact is, no money is being diverted from response needs. That's the fact.
Elon Musk saying it was a huge lie that the Biden administration was denying the fact that FEMA funds were being used on illegals, adding that funds were diverted from almost every part of the federal government to maximize the number of illegals in America, including Social Security. And a quick search shows that per their own announcements, DHS and FEMA admitted to diverting the funds that the Biden administration denied, proving that FEMA spent hundreds of millions of dollars on illegals over the past 4 years. Each announcement by DHS or FEMA showing the money was coming from FEMA and was being spent on communities receiving illegal migrants.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Awayo, Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. A little bit of breaking news. Pope has sent a letter to U.S. bishops decrying mass deportation and rejecting, quote, any measure that tacitly or explicitly identifies the illegal status of some migrants with criminality. The true Ordo Amoris, he says, is the ethos of the Good Samaritan. Bill, help me square this, because I know Pope Francis is progressive. That's not a shock. But like the Vatican City's own immigration policies are highly restrictive and restrict entry to citizens and do not allow foreign accommodations. I mean, it's not like Vatican City's taking in tons of illegal immigrants. So help me square how the Pope can, essentially condemn the United States for wanting to address illegal immigration when Vatican is highly restrictive in its immigration practices.
The Vatican's like a mile wide. There's not a lot of space, a lot of restriction. But then that's it. I mean, that's really that. In all honesty, it comes down to a lot of the idea of they can't necessarily provide for them there, and so they are looking to provide for them elsewhere. They can't take a ton of refugees or anything else because you don't have a lot of space. So the church, through its outreach and charities, does provide elsewhere, around the world. That's okay. You may be a person that doesn't take in illegal immigrants in your own home, but you donate to charities or organizations that do. You may not be a person that goes down and marches in right to life and anti-abortion protests. You may not be someone that shows up at the abortion clinic. You may not be someone that goes down and does the counseling, but you do it in a different way. It's basically it. That's
I see it as hypocrisy.
Yeah.
I see it as, look, you guys are terrible for wanting to address your illegal immigration policy. I mean, this letter that has been posted by James Martin, who's a progressive Catholic activist on Twitter, that this is a condemnation of American policies with regards to illegal immigration. You should welcome everybody. You should provide for everybody. You need to allocate your tax dollars to that. But we're too small. We couldn't do that. That's your job, your responsibility. Meanwhile, the Vatican is just chock full of gold and art and everything.
I understand
else.
Based on the money, but is the church only the Vatican? Is that the only place in which the Catholic Church exists on the planet?
It is a Catholic state.
That's not my question.
But no.
Is that the only place where the Catholic
state
Church
itself, its own state, does not practice what the Pope is telling other states to practice?
The church does practice what the Pope is asking them to practice, and that would be churches across the world does, and that would be it. That's where you can do the work. The work would be where the people are, and that would be the churches. And the churches are asking that they can be areas of sanctuary. They're fighting back on the idea that there should be immigration enforcement there, and that would be the best place to do it. Yes, but again, the nation they're doing it elsewhere. They're doing it through the outreach of where the church is. That's fine. I understand. I don't agree with them having all the money or everything else inside of the Vatican. I got some of my own issues there, but I don't see the hypocrisy that you do, because I understand the logistical problems, the issue with trying to take in, and it's also they're in Italy. So you're asking the Vatican to take people from Texas and then take them to Italy and house them. But rather than the churches there doing outreach to the immigrants, it would seem the most direct way to get help and assistance to the immigrants would be to do it where they are, which also would be in the original countries in which they were housed.
But
yes.
do you think that the Pope has the right to condemn the United States for wanting to address its illegal immigration policies the way the people want to?
Well, what do you mean by the way the people want to?
They voted to put Donald Trump into office.
Not the majority of them.
But he won a free and fair election.
But hang on. But the people, the majority did not vote for him. He received less than 50% of those votes that were cast in the election.
It doesn't matter. He won the election.
Wait, but you said the people.
People. Yeah,
I know, but you
just because
can't.
he doesn't have a majority doesn't mean that he didn't get the plurality.
But wouldn't that mean the people?
No.
Oh, it's okay. So
No,
less
he
than
won the
50% equals the
election.
people.
Oh, because he won the election.
No, I'm not arguing whether or not he won the
Right.
election.
That's how we determine the policy directions of this country.
Hang on. I'm not saying he's not the leader. I'm disagreeing with you using the example that the people chose this. There are a large section of this country that didn't choose this at all. In fact, the majority of voters, by a hair, didn't choose this administration. But this administration is in charge. So when you say the American people chose this, no. The vast majority of the American people did not. More than 50% did not. That's okay. He's the leader, and he can make those choices because he did win the election. But it's not the choice that America
my
made.
question, though, does the Pope have the right to weigh into what the American people have chosen via the election of Donald Trump to do with regards to illegal immigration?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because he's the church leader. Yes. Why can't the church weigh in on what a state is doing? Why can't they?
That sounds like Christian influence in politics.
I didn't say the church leading. I said the church weighing in. Why wouldn't they? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
they have the right to push their values.
No, they can have opinions on it. They have opinions on what the church is
just having
doing.
opinions.
Yeah,
He's seeking to actually shape public policy.
In what way?
By writing this letter to all the bishops.
Yeah, and telling them to do what?
To reject any measure that tacitly, explicitly identifies the illegal status of some migrants with criminality. He is pushing to drive an agenda in the law and policies of America.
And what's he saying as far as the criminality? The criminality is what?
Breaking the immigration laws.
But yeah, so basically just getting into the country illegally.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Right.
He's not saying people that are going out there breaking into cars or anything else.
But he's weighing into the law and policies of the United States. And I mean, I see it as radically hypocritical because the church itself, where the church has total control, the Catholic nation state of the Vatican City does not practice the same type of immigration rules and laws that he wants to force upon the American people here.
I disagree because of the functionality of the Vatican, and I disagree with lots of things the church is doing, but I disagree with this idea that if you're not taking in refugees or illegal immigrants inside the Vatican, that means you can't say anything about it nor have an opinion about it. And I don't necessarily agree with the church per se interfering or becoming, Christian nationalism as far as interfering with politics. He's having a push based on the religiosity. He's looking at who the people are that represent the church. He's asking the church and the bishops. He's not talking congregation. He's not talking about Americans. He's not saying that the government is illegitimate or anything else. He's saying that in the organization, here's what we want the people that belong to the organization to do. And a lot of them are going to ignore him, especially the American bishops. A lot of them are going to ignore him. They've been doing that for a long time. So I don't agree with you that it's hypocrisy based on the illegal immigration issue. And I also don't agree with you that they're necessarily messing in American politics. I don't agree with that one. I think they're saying that when our organization is dealing with this is how we are directing our organization to deal with it. And some of them are going to ignore that.
Oh, there's no way. This is not just about how we operate. This is about the laws and policies of the United States of America, and the Catholic bishop the Pope is weighing in on this. And that just goes to show the weakness of the critique of Christian values in politics, right? Because you're not going to hear progressives say that this is a form of Christian nationalism. This is forcing our Christian values upon our politics. They're going to welcome this. They're going to use this. They're going to embrace this. So they never really didn't like Christianity and politics to begin with. They just used any type of effort to try to keep particularly conservative Christian values out of politics. That was the whole point.
Is the Pope directing what the government should do? Is the Pope? No.
100%.
No.
That is exactly what he's doing.
No, he's directing what the bishops should do. He's not telling
influence American policy.
No, he's directing the bishops to take X actions. They're saying the bishops, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. Where the Christian nationalism comes into it is where it's the idea that the church needs to be directing the government. that the church needs to be responsible for the government, that the government should be asking the
Bill,
church
this is
what to
his
do.
exact language. This is not a minor issue.
Yeah.
An authentic rule of law is verified precisely, sorry, it's really small, in the dignified treatment of all people deserve, especially the poorest and most marginalized. The true common good is promoted when society and government, with creativity and strict respect for the rights of all, as I have affirmed on numerous occasions, welcomes, protects, promotes, and integrates the most fragile and unprotected and vulnerable. This does not impede the development of a policy that regulates orderly and legal migration. However, the development cannot come about through the privilege of some and the sacrifice of others. What is built on the basis of force and not on the truth about the equal dignity of every human being begins badly and will end badly. He's specifically talking about society, government, and law.
Yeah, but he's not saying the church is not taking over the idea and saying he's not saying that you need to listen to the church and all rules and regulations. He's giving guidance for individuals. It's not the same thing.
That's not guidance for individuals. It's guidance for government, law, and society. He writes it right there.
It's guidance to the bishops. He's telling the bishops in the congregation, which is what the church has guidance for. And that's fine. But he's not saying that the church should run the government. He's saying this is how society, this is in the church's opinion, how society should be set up. But he's not telling the government.
He's using.
He's not. No,
yeah,
he's not.
This is exactly what he's doing.
No, he's not. No. Show me where he's saying Donald Trump has to do this. Show me where he's saying that, that's the thing is, I just don't see him taking over. He's giving guidance and he's saying this is how the church views it, but he's not coming in and saying, it would be better if the church ran the state. And that's where we get into people that are on the conservative side of this. And there are people also on the liberal side that think that their specific church or whatever their belief system is should run the state.
What he is advocating for is the influence of Catholic values as it relates to immigration to influence public policy, law, and government. It says it explicitly in his letter. Where do you fall along these lines? I find the Catholic Church on this rather hypocritical. If you look at the immigration policies of Vatican City, they're highly restrictive. You don't see Pope Francis trying to address that. He just wants to tell the United States of America what they need to do with regards to their immigration policies. Or do you see this as a great act of charity, kindness, and human rights, and fulfilling the call to care for the illegal immigrant, the stranger among us, the Good Samaritan? Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
The USAID has been in the spotlight recently as Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, aka DOGE, has been auditing the organization to figure out what American taxpayer dollars are being spent on and how his department can cut the waste, fraud, and overspending from the budget. Some of the payments he found are more than questionable, such as That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Weil, Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Billy and I are going to take a moment to pause our debate over theology, Christian nationalism, the role of the Pope, and everything else. A little moment of levity with You Choose the News.
Yes, it is that time of the morning where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. I spent mere moments this morning scouring the interwebs for really dumb stories about us humans. It's super easy to do. And then giving them even more ridiculous headlines so that we can play this fake radio news game show. Why? Because nobody in charge has any idea we are this irresponsible with our valuable airtime. So, shh, this is a secret. We'd appreciate if you just keep it between all of us. All righty. Here are the headlines this morning. Blake Olson joining us from the newsroom. Jeff Hunt in the studio. Headline number 1. Ready for Denmarkification? Headline number 2. Hire an expert. Headline number 3. Peekapoo. Headline number 4. Embracing American culture. Jeff Hunt, your choice, sir.
Stu, ready for Denmarkification?
Yeah, are you ready for Denmarkification? In response to Donald Trump's continued musings about the U.S. acquiring Greenland, Danish citizens have launched their own effort to maybe purchase a spicy part of America. Yes, the Denmarkification online petition has now garnered almost 200,000 signatures. Don't know how many of them are legit, but 200,000 signatures saying that Danish citizens should be purchasing our golden state. Yes, they want California.
Take it.
They want the sunshine, the dominance in the tech industry, limited avocado toast, and easy access to Disneyland. Before you give it to them, understand what the GDP size of California is.
Yeah, I know.
You may want to not throw that one away. They also want to rename Disneyland in honor of the poet Hans Christian Andersen. They have proposed that the Lego executives, along with the cast of the Danish political drama Borgen, negotiate the deal on behalf of the Scandinavian nation. Organizers said they also would throw in a lifetime supply of Danish pastries to sweeten the deal, just so that America is not upset. So again,
it is the land of fruits and nuts. So.
But Denmark wants. I would not give up money. But yeah, Denmark wants to, just take over California as long as we're trading land.
Well, we got to negotiate.
Just saying.
What can we do to make sure they just take Gavin Newsom? Or maybe Gavin Newsom's hair.
Oh, no, his hair's great. He's got to keep his hair. Okay. Now, Blake Olson, news department, sir. Hire an expert, peekapoo, or embracing American culture.
Hire an expert.
Yeah, got to hire an expert when you've got the right job. Well, fortunately, if you're ever involved in a DUI, you have found the right expert in 63-year-old Russell Crumbly. He is a Huntsville DUI attorney that was arrested on a DUI charge this past weekend.
Oh.
Yes, Huntsville police noticed a car on the road that appeared to have been in an accident. The officer pulled the driver over, and it was 63-year-old Russell. Following a preliminary investigation, he failed the sobriety test, and probable cause was developed, and he was arrested. He was transported to jail. He has since bonded out. And just in case you're wondering, he's a defense lawyer specializing in DUI at Crumbly Blackwell Price Attorneys. He handles cases all across North Alabama relating to criminal defense, DUI, personal injury, and divorce. So, in other words, he was just doing research.
Right there in Muscle Shoals in northern Alabama.
He was just making sure. Yeah,
just making sure.
Yeah, just making sure that those
The
laws
roads
are
are
being followed
dangerous.
properly. Yes.
Yeah.
And he also wanted to see what is the actual blood alcohol limit you can still drink and drive. It's all research.
That's horrible.
Yeah. All righty.
Come on.
Jeff, your choice, sir. Peekapoo or embracing American culture?
Embracing American culture, please.
Yes, we are embracing American culture as we travel to Miami. A federal judge has handed down an 8-year sentence to a former car dealer because he was convicted of carjacking a customer over a single missed payment. Yes. Eric Haddad, 59, who is a member of a citizen of Israel. He is a naturalized citizen. He's got dual citizenship. He basically victimized a 24-year-old Haitian immigrant who bought a 2020 Honda Accord from him in October of 2023. Prosecutors say that the victim was never given a copy of the sales paperwork, which was important because he was not aware of an agreement with the finance company that stipulated if he was late on a single payment in the first 2 months of the loan, the finance company would demand approximately $13,800 it paid for the loan from the dealership. Well, the first payment did bounce. He since rectified that, but Haddad wasn't satisfied, so he followed him one morning and tried to carjack him as he was at Miami International Airport. Yes, yelled and screamed at him and about to get in the car, and yeah, so he got arrested. Because, that's the best way to get the car back when you're possessing it, carjacking. Yes.
Right.
We all know that. All right, that's the end of You Choose the News. Back to you, sir.
You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is 710 KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. In a second, we're going to talk with Trent England. He's the founder and executive director of Save Our States. There's an effort down at the Colorado State Capitol to repeal our commitment to the National Popular Vote Compact, which, if was actually enforced, would have given the Electoral College votes of Colorado to Donald Trump. How do the Democrats and independents who voted for that feel about that? We'll get into that in just a second. I'm going to go back to the phone lines real quick. John, Wyoming. Good morning, John. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show. Jack, good morning, Jack.
Yeah, good morning. It's very interesting, the history of law and canon law, which is from medieval times with the church. But the reason why law was taught by the church is because the clergy were the only people who knew how to read and write. At one point in England, they didn't want the church controlling the law. They wanted the monarchy to do it. They wanted to be the king's law, not the clergy law. And they outlawed the teaching of law within the area of London. They had to go outside of the area because they didn't want to compete with it. But when I was a kid, now I'm 82 now, but when I was a kid, I mean, this is probably a carryover, but it was a sin to eat meat on Friday. You had to eat fish. I mean, that was kind of, I mean, I don't think you ever heard of that today. But, you know, when I was a kid, that's what we were taught. But
that's changed. That changed maybe 15 years ago, I think, is when it was changed. I don't remember. But yeah, that was a real grown up as well for me.
But there were even Thomas Aquinas, who had a huge influence on Christianity. He always referred to a natural law, which is basically what we all believe anyway. And this country it's an integral part of this country is the rights you have in natural law. But it's all faded away. When you're talking about that other stuff, that goes back, you know, hundreds of years.
But Jack, I am going to tell you this all now. This is a prediction, but I think I'm right on this. You are going to watch that whole idea of Christianity influencing politics go out the window from the left as they seek to try to stop Donald Trump. And they're going to, and that's fine, I don't care, bring your Christian values into the public square. If you want to debate illegal immigration over the issue of how we treat the Good Samaritan and all that, I don't have any problem with that. But it's going to be the same people that just a few years ago were saying strict separation. We can't have Christian values influencing our politics, are going to be happy to have Christian values influence their politics.
Well, okay, but the reason why the communists have always not wanted to compete with any kind of a religion. They wanted to control everything.
100%.
And the Democrats are their modern day communists. I mean, come on, that's what it's all about. I mean, it's just like you see these people still wearing these masks. They'll be driving down the road in a car. They're the only one in there, and they've got a mask on. And, you know, they're all Democrats. And you know why the Democrats wear the mask? I'm going to tell you why they wear the mask. Because they actually think that logic and reason is an airborne phenomenon, that they can catch it if they're not wearing a mask, and they'll be infected with logic and reason, which a Democrat can't do that.
That's funny. Good call this morning, Jack. Thanks so much. You made me laugh. All right. We got Blake Olson with news and comment.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. I agree with John. 11 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 23. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, speaking of masks, Colorado has been experiencing very high flu activity. According to a report from the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Mark Montano, the medical director for Care Now Urgent Care, confirms it's been a pretty bad flu season.
We are still seeing a lot more patients, and we haven't plateaued. We haven't started going down in the number of cases.
Go see the doctor if you get sick. DJT scheduled to hold talks with the King of Jordan today. The meeting with King Abdullah II comes after the president floated a proposal to take over the Gaza Strip and resettle Palestinians living in the occupied territory to neighboring countries such as Jordan and then Egypt as they rebuild. King Abdullah turned it down, but 47 says that we'll withhold aid to those countries if they don't go along with the plan. Trump also told Hamas it's time to release all those Israeli hostages.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday. And if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock. And after that, I would say all hell is going to.
Got till noon on Saturday. Looks like a collapsed landing gear may have been the cause of a deadly plane crash near Phoenix involving a jet owned by Motley Crue lead singer Vince Neil. One person was killed at Scottsdale Airport, 3 people taken to hospitals, including Neil's girlfriend. Neil was not on the plane. Fed Chair Jerome Powell heads to the Hill today to begin 2 days of testimony before Congress, focusing on the state of the economy. His appearance comes as Elon, head of Doge, appears to be backing the idea of former Congressman Ron Paul replacing Powell. 47 slammed the central bank last month. Thousands of Meta employees are losing their jobs. The Facebook parent company began handing pink slips out on Monday in an effort to eliminate about 5% of its workforce. Approximately 3,600 employees are expected to be let go. Some people are upset.
So let me tell you something, Mr. Trump.
Oh, no, wait a minute. That's lefty politicians. They're upset that DJT and Elon are exposing where our tax dollars are going.
You gonna learn a few lessons from us. And I'm gonna be the first one. You and your little friend off of Twitter, y'all about to find out, all right? Now y'all know he likes to pound around with Putin, right? He's trying to turn us into Russia.
All right, that's Jasmine Crockett from Texas, and some preachers, they're upset also. Steve Cottle in Tennessee, who lies a lot.
When Elon Musk forces his way into the United States Treasury and threatens to steal your personal information and your Social Security check, there is a possibility of violence. Sometimes the devil will act so ugly that you have no other choice but to get violent and fight.
All right, and encouraging the violence in the church and telling some tall tales. Problem is now all those NGOs that paid for all the rioters are being cut. How are you going to pay for all those arsonists? That's what I want to know. In 2009, Pocahontas Liz Warren agreed with the Patriots.
When that much money disappears, it's usually because somebody broke some laws somewhere. But if we don't look, if we don't ask, if we don't uncover it and make it all public, we'll never find out.
We are here to fight back.
That was her a couple of days ago. Now, how dare you try to cut waste and fraud? DJT.
Pocahontas, the faker. That was set up to destroy people. She used that as her little personal agency to go around and destroy people. And she's a fake. Just like she said she was an Indian, and she wasn't an Indian. You have more Indian blood in you than she has. She went to college based on the fact that she was an Indian. She got jobs based on the fact that she was an Indian. She's a fake. That was set up to destroy some very good people, and it worked. I mean, it worked. A lot of great people. I'll tell you, before I ever heard the term, people would come up to me in the Midwest and areas that say, "Sir, I'm being destroyed by them." They use that to destroy people. She's a nasty woman. She's a really nasty woman, despite her phony beer commercial.
I'm going to go get me a beer now. I don't know if you've seen that one. Hey, the Westminster Kennel Club dog show is underway in New York City. Around 2,500 dogs representing more than 200 breeds are taking part in the annual event that ends tonight with the crowning of Best in Show.
Am I seeing right? Where's she putting her hands now?
She's just checking out the dog's testicular area to make sure that everything is intact.
Hate to go out on a date with Judge Edie Franklin, have her judge me. That'd be no fun.
Would you please take your dog down and back for me, please?
The great Fred Willard, Best in Show. That's one of my top three.
Is it?
One of my top three, man.
Top three?
Oh, yeah, dude. I love Best in Show. You don't like Best in Show?
No, I mean, it's fun, but top three.
That's man. It is right there behind Office Space and Tommy Boy. No doubt. I watched that the first time, and my stomach hurt so hard, so bad from laughing. Great show. Nuggets blow out the Blazers, and Luka Doncic in his first game with the Lakers. The NBA is all excited about this. 14 points, the Lakers win, and Luka is now a Laker, and Dallas gets screwed. 10 in Englewood, 9 in Westminster, and 11 or 12 degrees in Denver right now. Jeff and Bill, it's a cold one out there. It's Tuesday.
Am I seeing right? Where's she putting her hands now?
She's
Best
just
in
checking
Show.
out the dog's testicular area to make sure
Best. You got to check that movie out if you've never seen it. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A winter weather advisory is in effect from early this afternoon through late Wednesday morning. Arctic air is going to collide with Pacific moisture. Cold today, some fog, some flurries early in the day, highs reaching the low to mid-20s and falling back to the teens. By mid-afternoon, a steady light snow will develop. Snow will be likely tonight, lingering into Wednesday morning. Lows tonight will be single digits, highs tomorrow teens. Could see about 2 to 5 inches of new snow by early Wednesday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, so yesterday there was an effort to repeal the National Popular Vote Compact here in Colorado. I get questions about this all the time, especially in this last election, because the popular vote went to Donald Trump. So does that mean that Colorado's delegates have to then be committed to go to Donald Trump? Well, the National Popular Vote Compact has not kicked in yet, but Colorado has agreed to join it. I think it's terrible. And one of the lead fighters against the National Popular Vote Compact is Trent England. He's the founder and executive director of Save Our States. He was here yesterday to testify in support of this bill. Trent, thanks so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Absolutely. Yeah, glad to be here.
So give us some insight into what was introduced yesterday and then how the hearing went.
Well, Representative DeGraff introduced a bill to just take Colorado out of this compact, and as you say, it hasn't. The compact hasn't taken effect. It's not going to take effect, anytime in the immediate future. But it's this sort of Damocles hanging over American elections, hanging over Colorado, and so. He put forward this bill to just repeal it, get Colorado out of it, make it less likely that this anti-electoral college, really anti-constitution measure would ever take effect.
Now, was there any sense, especially after this last election, that maybe progressives that are pushing this National Popular Vote Compact want to pull back from the table a little bit, right? Like Colorado's electors would have gone to Donald Trump. This state is about as deep into the blue tank as you can get at this point, and their electors and California's electors and Oregon's electors and Washington would have all gone to Donald Trump. Like, is there a sense that reality might be hitting them a little bit?
I haven't seen that yet. And you would think that they would say, well, wait a second. I mean, they've been repeating this mantra that Republicans can't win the popular vote. Republicans are never going to win the popular vote, which was always a silly view, but it certainly helped to push the compact along in blue states. And we haven't really seen that yet. It appeared that all of the Democrats at the committee yesterday were in favor of the compact still. And I don't know if it's that they just believe that the way this compact is written, that these blue states that have entered it would have a lot of power and maybe could manipulate the outcome, or if they just have this strange belief in sort of mob rule that they can't get themselves away from, even if they can see that might not help them politically. It's really hard to tell.
Talking with Trent England, he's the founder and the executive director of Save Our State. So the result of the committee hearing was it went down on a party line vote. Colorado still has the National Popular Vote Compact. Is that right?
Yeah, at this point, Colorado is going to stay in the compact, and it's good to see legislators like Representative DeGraff bringing this up. I think it's an important conversation to have. But for now, Colorado is in, and yet the compact, it has a trigger. It would need to have states worth 270 or more electoral votes in the compact. Right now, they have basically all of the blue states, which adds up to 17 states, 209 electoral votes. So they're short of their goal, but still, that's a lot of states, that are trying to push this unconstitutional, anti-constitutional measure.
So if it did pass, the result would be, and we'll get into some of the legal challenges in a second, but according to them, if National Popular Vote Compact did pass, whoever wins the National Popular Vote gets all of the electors, and they essentially become president. That's essentially how it works, right?
Yeah, the way the compact works is it would change who becomes the presidential electors in all of the states in the compact. So in Colorado, if the compact had been in effect, then the Republicans' presidential electors would have been chosen, even though the majority of Coloradans voted for the Democrats. The Republican electors would have been chosen based on the nationwide popular vote. That's at least how the compact would work in theory, and that would force the Electoral College, when you have all those compact states do that, to rubber stamp the popular vote result, no matter what the result would be under a normal Electoral College process.
Now, Trent England, founder and executive director of Save Our States, isn't that a better democracy? Isn't that a more pure democracy? That's what they say.
Yeah, it's got all kinds of problems with it, even though it has this surface appeal, right? I mean, I think part of the appeal of a national popular vote is it's just really simple, right? That's a really simple kind of election. It's easy to understand. We could maybe cut a week off of our civics class in school, right? So the problem with that is that it takes away the checks and balances that are in the Electoral College as it was designed, right? Which is, there's an upper limit on how much power any state can have, which means really there's an upper limit on how much power any big state can have, any big population center. And because there's a limit, right? Because once you've got a majority in California, you don't get extra points by running up the score there, right? You don't get extra points because instead of winning California with 55%, you win it with 65 or 70%. Because of that, it creates the balance. It creates the balance among the states. It pushes power out to smaller states like Colorado, like Nevada, right? These smaller, states, oftentimes with more rural areas, they get more power. They get a distinctive voice with the Electoral College. And the National Popular Vote Compact would just do away with all of that. And in fact, that's really their goal, right? This is a campaign. This National Popular Vote campaign is run from California. It's funded primarily by people in California. It would dramatically increase the power of California at the expense of people in most of the rest of the country.
And when you look at the Electoral College map, you see, lots of red and a lot of blue right around the major cities. So if the Electoral College Popular Vote Compact was successful, the biggest power would be with these progressive cities, and it wouldn't be more balanced out. Now, Trent England, founder and executive director of Save Our States, what's the legal process here? Obviously, there would probably be a constitutional challenge to this, right?
Can't be challenged now because it hasn't taken effect, right? It hasn't hit the trigger, and it's not in effect, so you can't sue, unfortunately. But there are a lot of different challenges to this. One is that the Constitution actually says that for states to enter into a compact with each other, it has to have the consent of Congress. They're trying to put this compact into effect without the consent of Congress. And another really significant constitutional and practical problem is that the national popular vote, because it's just an interstate compact, it actually can't harmonize state election rules. And so it claims to create a national popular vote, but it doesn't really do that. It would be like Colorado having an election for governor where every county gets to set completely its own rules, right? So, one county could allow felons to vote in prison, while another county says, no, you can't vote if you're a felon. One county could lower the voting age to 15, right? While other counties don't do that. Counties could have different recount rules. That's actually the way it is among the states right now, right? States have all kinds of different rules and ways that they conduct their elections. Thankfully, no states have lowered their voting ages to 15, but there is a push for that in some blue states. And with the National Popular Vote Compact, all of those things could happen. That actually that violates an election principle that is in the Constitution that has never been tested, whether you can apply that across state lines. So it gets a little bit complicated there, but I think there is a common sense piece of that, right? Which is when you're conducting an election, you need to have similar rules within each place where, within all the places where the election is going on. With the Electoral College, as it is right now, as it was designed to work, that election is contained within each state, right? So states can have different rules. With national popular vote, it becomes a real problem if you've got, Maine using ranked choice voting and, this state with this set of recount rules and another state with totally different rules, right? That's a practical and a constitutional problem that I think could bring the whole compact down.
Trent England, founder and executive director of Save Our States, on the Jeff and Bill Show. If the idea of having an electoral college is such a great way to conduct the election, why are we pretty much the only ones that do it still? Why aren't other countries adopting this manner of running their elections?
Well, one of the reasons why we have an electoral college, why we need an electoral college, is that even at the beginning, when we were these original 13 states that had been 13 colonies, we were already a big country geographically, already very diverse, and that's where you need a two-step election process, right? When you have a big, diverse area, it's why we don't use an electoral college within any of our states. Although I've talked to a lot of people who say, oh, maybe that would be a good idea for governor. Maybe we get a little more representation in rural areas. But when you look around the world, what you do see is India and Germany, which are a couple of the bigger, more diverse countries. Certainly India is called the biggest democracy oftentimes. India has a version of an electoral college. Germany has a version of an electoral college. They're different than ours. But what's telling is those two countries wrote their constitutions around 1950, right? The Indians got independence from Britain around that time. Germany, after it's really West Germany, and now it's the German unified German constitution after World War II. So a couple of the biggest and most recently written constitutions in the biggest countries actually do use an electoral college. And for a lot of the other big countries, they use a parliamentary system, which actually is kind of the basis for our electoral college, because the rough draft of the Constitution would have had a parliamentary system. Basically, Congress would have elected the president. The American founders said, we don't want to do that, but let's still use that kind of a model where you have two steps, but instead of that middle step being members of Congress who are politicians, let's make that middle step presidential electors, somebody, a group of people who aren't otherwise politicians. They're going to be less likely, hopefully, to be involved in, political wheeling and dealing and potentially corruption. They just do this one job. They represent the states in the presidential election, and then they go away. So our system is kind of similar to these parliamentary systems that are used all around the world, including, Canada, Britain, Australia, Japan, Israel. They all have this process to elect their prime minister. That's a two-step process, like our electoral college that we use to elect a president.
Now, Trent England, founder and executive director of Save Our States, there's nothing per se that necessarily binds the electoral votes to that candidate. The person that is elected and makes those choices can go against, and we've seen that in the past. Is that creating a barrier between direct representation and an election? The idea being that if, in theory, if I could go around and persuade enough of the electors that the people were just too darn dumb in their choice, and we need to protect them from their own stupidity. I could, in theory, persuade them to make another choice outside of what the American people had voted for. Is that necessarily a system that would preserve democracy? What's your opinion on that?
Well, so that's the problem of so-called faithless electors. And the reason why it's never actually become a real problem, even though we have seen some electors, some presidential electors, vote other than the way that their state voted, other than the way they were expected to vote, is that these presidential electors are partisans, right? So when the Republicans win my home state of Oklahoma, the presidential electors are people who were nominated by the Republican Party. When the Democrats win the most votes in Colorado, the presidential electors representing Colorado are people who are nominated, in that case, then by the Democratic Party. So the presidential electors themselves, who really are elected officials, even though they just have this one job, cast a vote for president, cast a vote for vice president. They're partisans. They have a really, really strong interest in getting their candidates elected, which is why typically faithless electors are people on the losing side who are trying to send a message. I have a legislator who I knew in Washington State who in 1976 had been a faithless elector because he was one of the Republicans. They won Washington State back then. And instead of voting for Gerald Ford, he voted for Ronald Reagan because he thought that Ronald Reagan should have been the nominee. He wanted him to be the nominee in 1980. And so he was able to say that he cast the first electoral vote for Ronald Reagan in 1976. That's a really typical model of a faithless elector, right? He was just sending a message. He knew it wasn't going to change the outcome. But the Supreme Court in 2020 did say officially that states can bind electors, require them by state law to vote for the candidate that won the most votes in their state. That had been an open question for a long time, whether states really could do that. And so now we see, a lot of states have so-called faithless elector laws that are just making that really a non-issue.
But in theory, couldn't they just break that law, suffer the consequence, and still cast their electoral vote for who they wanted? I'm not certain there's any recourse on the other end. And again, what I'm looking at is the separation between what the American people are voting for and this buffer that has been placed between them and the actual vote for who they're electing, and how that can be, in theory, problematic.
Well, not in some states. It depends on what a state's faithless elector law says. The law in, I believe the law in Colorado, and I know this is true of other states, is that if you're a presidential elector and you attempt to cast your electoral votes for somebody other than the candidate who won in your state, you're just considered to be out of order, and you're removed as a faithless elector and replaced with an alternate. So at least in some states, you actually can't cast a faithless vote anymore because it's not just a penalty. It used to be that some state laws just said you can't do it, but there was no penalty, and some said, well, you can't do it and there's a fine or something. Now we have these laws that say no, you are replaced with a faithful elector if you try to do that. So I do think that problem really is going away as states adopt those laws.
Trent England, founder and executive director of Save Our States. If those laws do constrain what the elector can do and what vote they can take, doesn't that just make their job moot? They're somewhat irrelevant. You're just naming them to do something that they're mandated to do by law, to just stand there and do something perfunctory. Doesn't that, by definition, then remove them from the process? Say, you're not really needed if you are bound by law to have to make this choice. Why don't we just eliminate that middleman? Why don't we just do it that way?
I think, people have talked about that. You could amend the Constitution and sort of have the Secretary of State basically say, this is how our electoral votes go. The challenges with that is if you had a candidate, say, die between Election Day and swearing in, or there are some scenarios where having people still play that role of presidential elector could be important, where they could have to exercise some kind of judgment, or at least make some kind of change. And the way it works right now, if you had something like that happen, what people assume would happen is that you'd have, if God forbid, right? But say something had happened to Donald Trump the day after Election Day, the assumption is that the Republican Party would quickly meet and say, well, J.D. Vance is actually now our nominee for president, and we're going to nominate somebody else for vice president. And then the presidential electors, when they met in December, could have, they could have just cast their votes that way. Now that does get into question of how state faithless elector laws are written and whether they explicitly allow for that or whether that's an open question. But that's a real debate that goes on with scholars. Do we really need people to be presidential electors anymore, or could we do it some other way?
Did you hear that, Bill? It's a debate among scholars. You're a scholar and a gentleman.
No, just tell me when they show up because I want to talk to them.
Trent England, Save Our States. Now, Trent, during this last election, ranked choice voting crashed and burned in Colorado. A good thing from your perspective.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, ranked choice voting just makes the whole election process harder, makes it harder for voters to vote their ballots. It literally takes a lot more time. The same thing with election officials. It makes it harder for them to do their jobs. It takes more time to process and count the ballots and report the results. And it makes it a lot harder for people to trust the outcome because it's less transparent. It requires feeding it all into computers and basically trusting what they say. So, yeah, I think Colorado dodged a bullet on ranked choice voting.
And the argument coming from that side, though, is that we'll get less extremist candidates. What do you think of that? And then two, places like Alaska, Washington, where they have ranked choice voting, seem to be walking away.
Yeah, there's a real fight. Alaska almost repealed ranked choice voting. It literally lost by less than 1,000 votes after the pro ranked choice voting folks spent millions and millions of dollars up there in Alaska. There's a push to repeal it in Maine where they use it. And we've seen, Washington State, where I grew up, they've had places that have used it and then have repealed it. Even the Democrat Secretary of State up there has been against expanding ranked choice voting. That's kind of the history with this whole system. I mean, it's actually not new. It goes back to Victorian England. So, ranked choice voting is like a 150-year-old idea. And in the United States, the history has mostly been local governments trying it, using it for a couple of election cycles, and then getting rid of it because it just doesn't result in more moderate candidates being elected. It doesn't result in, voters having better choices. Sometimes they peddle it that way. You basically get the same kind of politics we have now with a more complicated election system. And I don't know why you would do that.
Trent England, founder and executive director of Save Our States. You can follow him on X at Trent England, and then follow Save Our States at Save Our States on X as well. He was testifying yesterday here in Colorado in an effort to repeal the National Popular Vote Compact. Democrats voting along a party line to maintain Colorado's commitment to the National Popular Vote Compact. Trent, thanks so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Bill.
Great conversation.
That was cool.
Look, if the last couple of years have taught us anything, it's to value the things we can control, and addressing hair loss is no exception. Our friends at Advanced Hair Restoration can reverse years or even decades of hair loss with their simple one-day treatment. Your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day, and your new hair is backed by the Advanced Hair Guarantee. It works for bald spots, receding hairlines, thinning hair, men, women, younger, wiser. Advanced Hair can address many different patterns of hair loss. Advanced Hair's top-rated physicians, like Dr. Tanya Pauls, have changed tens of thousands of people's lives, and now it's your turn. Schedule a free consultation by calling 720-459-HAIR, and to celebrate, get special financing, 250 free hair grafts, and $250 off. Value the things you can control and start regrowing your own natural hair today. That's 720-459-HAIR, or become inspired with before and after pictures at advancedhair.com. I was watching a video the other day. How many major male celebrities have gotten hair treatments done? Matthew McConaughey, Ben Affleck, all these guys. It's not something to be ashamed of, guys. Some of the top celebrity talent has gotten their hair done. So check out advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and text. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Awayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
Border Patrol agents busted a human smuggling operation at a hotel in El Paso, Texas, according to Border Patrol Chief Michael W. Banks. 13 illegal migrants from Mexico, Ecuador, and Guatemala were arrested, as well as the 4 smugglers. The migrants were processed for removal, and the smugglers will now face prosecution. In a separate incident, border agents seized fake green cards from a mobile home in Las Cruces, New Mexico, that they suspect was being used as a migrant stash house. Banks saying smugglers exploit various locations, hotels, stash houses, even trucks, overcrowding and endangering lives solely for profit. In addition, Border Patrol agents in El Paso arrested a known member of the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, who is now being shipped back to Venezuela. USAID staffers who showed up for work at its Washington headquarters have been turned away after the Trump administration stripped the aid agency of its lease. The Trump administration confirmed that it had taken USAID off the lease of the building that it occupied for decades after Elon Musk's Doge found hundreds of billions of dollars of waste and fraud, prompting him to call it a criminal organization. USAID's eviction from its headquarters marks the latest in the swift dismantling of the overspending and fraud in federal government agencies by President Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
In Dallas, Christina Awayo, Salem News Channel.
back to the Jeff and Bill show. The Denver Gazette reporting that Colorado Senators John Hickenlooper and Michael Bennet are joining with Democrat-sponsored legislation to restrict immigration-related arrests at locations that were off limits to federal agents until recently, including schools, hospitals, and churches. The bill, authored by Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal and dubbed the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act, would reinstate protections that were in place for more than a decade, prohibiting immigration and custom enforcement officers and Customs and Border Protection agents from conducting arrests in designated locations. On January 21st, President Donald Trump rescinded the Immigration Enforcement Agency's policies as part of his administration's push to carry out mass deportations. ICE and other federal agents staged a series of high-profile raids last week in Denver, Aurora, and other metro area cities amid stepped-up enforcement nationwide. We all want criminals off our streets and a more secure border, Hickenlooper said. Targeting kids and families who have committed a crime, especially at their schools, hospitals, and places of worship, doesn't get us any closer to fixing our broken immigration system, he says. Bennett called the Trump administration's move to let immigration agents operate in previously protected areas, quote, deeply concerning and against long-standing precedent. Every Coloradan should feel safe to go to school, church, and the doctor without fear of arrest, Bennett said. Representative Gabe Evans, on the other hand, from a Republican from Fort Lupton, told Colorado Politics that proposed legislation would make the state less safe. As a former cop, I know the location in which an arrest takes place is currently a balancing act that requires legal consideration of sensitive locations versus public safety. Democrats like Hickenlooper are dead set on making Colorado less safe. Evans added, by blanketly designating hospitals, churches, and victim service organizations as places where arrests cannot occur, dangerous criminal gangs and cartels will gravitate to these locations, putting our most vulnerable directly in harm's way. Where do you fall along the lines on this? I agree with Gabe Evans that this kind of reminds me of like Hamas going, no, we got hospitals. And then meanwhile, launching all of their activities out of those. Not saying that there's terrorist activities taking place out of these schools, but when you give criminals safe spaces where they know law enforcement is not going to be, they're going to abuse those safe spaces. Bill, your thoughts?
Do we have any information showing that the criminals are operating out of either schools or churches? That would be my question. Are they happening from there? Because if they are, then I think we have a reason to go in there and look. If they aren't, and that would be my assumption, is that the churches aren't hiding the gang members. I would be shocked to find more than even a single congregation. I'm not saying that you couldn't find any. So I would say you probably could come up with one out there that would provide aid and comfort.
There's some lefty congregations.
There could be,
for sure.
Yeah, but again, you should be able to show that to me, that this is where the activity is. I mean, we had Stephen Tubbs and the acting director of the Western Region DEA agent here, and they found the illegal nightclub. So if they are operating out of necessarily a church or a school, the school is much more problematic for me, because how the hell does that work? Especially when the school has, are they a club, an extracurricular? Where would that go on? That's the thing that I have kind of an issue with, is you need to show me these aren't safe spaces right now before assuming they aren't safe spaces. And that's where I push back on this one, is the assumption that, well, obviously the churches and the schools are hiding all the illegals. I disagree with that. I think that you're going to be able to find them at job sites. You'll be able to find them at home. You're going to be able to find them in some of these off-hours clubs. You'll find them at regular clubs. You'll find them downtown. You're going to find them a lot of places. I don't think that you're necessarily going to find them operating out of either schools and churches, which is one of the pushes I've had in this entire time, is if we are going after the illegals, why in the hell are we going after the schools? Because unless the illegals are working at the schools, I don't see the reason there. Because the argument always has been, why are they coming here and staying in the shadows and they're not integrating themselves into our society? One of the best ways to integrate any immigrant into the society is get them into the educational system. And those kids are coming home and bringing the lessons they have from American society back into the house that they live in, regardless of what the parents are doing. So I just want to see, is that where the criminals are hiding?
My take on this, there are no safe spaces. If you're an illegal immigrant, I should be able to grab you wherever you are. Join the conversation. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplos Law text line, 720-819-5115. Should there be sensitive location protections? You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
The USAID has been in the spotlight recently as Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, aka DOGE, has been auditing the organization to figure out what American taxpayer dollars are being spent on and how his department can cut the waste, fraud, and overspending from the budget. Some of the payments he found are more than questionable, such as
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. John Hickenlooper from Michael Bennett, running with other Democrats, try to pass the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act, which would protect ICE and border protection agents from conducting arrests in places like hospitals, schools, churches, places like that. Rob from Tennessee, by definition, crossing the border illegally makes every illegal alien a criminal. It doesn't matter whether you find them at home, a job site, school, or church. We should also pick up the employer for not checking their immigration status and if they're using someone else's social security number. So Rob, believing with me, no safe spaces. Sorry, you broke the law. I should have everywhere to be able to go. And I'm concerned too that similar to what you see Hamas doing is that they start, now I'm not saying that illegal immigrants are terrorists by any means, but I found that you give folks a safe space, they can sometimes abuse it. Let's go to the phones. Joan Lakewood. Good morning, Joan. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning. I sincerely believe that anything that Hickenlooper and Bennett are going to push forward, I have never seen anything they've done do anything fruitful for me. But I believe that there shouldn't be safe spaces for these people, not so much because of the people that aren't violent, but the violence that we've seen with the Venezuela's gangs beating up people, pulling out their fingernails. I can see them doing the same thing to a church and forcing the church and taking over the church. And I have seen in my day and age, teenagers that have taken over their families' homes and pretty much held their family at hostage. They're very good hostage takers. So I don't want to see spaces made available for them to take hostages.
All right, Joan, I agree with you on that. Joan, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Another text message, 5631. If a criminal gang member runs into a hospital under this proposed bill, they can't be arrested. Same for schools and churches. Is this for any criminal or just criminals who are also illegal aliens? It would basically say these places are off limits for ICE agents to go and arrest folks. And I think that'll get out into the community and they'll abuse it. Let's go to Joe Arvada. Good morning, Joe. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning, Jeff, Billy. We need to reshape this conversation. These are people that are here that are part of these gangs and that are trafficking, whether it's drugs or children or whatever it is. Those criminal aliens that are caught have been classified by the federal government as war combatants. Because you got to understand something. This didn't just develop by just some nice people coming over and doing, sharing some pot. No, fentanyl is moving across the border, and so are children. And these people that are helping them are helping this illegal activity. So I said to Billy, and I believe this should happen, when you get some of these people that are helping to harbor these individuals and helping to traffic, they really are helping to traffic these people and drugs and enemy combatants of the United States. Some of them are actually terrorists that these entities are helping to sponsor. And when they do, they should be classified as helping enemy combatants. And
Joe, I appreciate the perspective. We'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is 710 KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, February 11th, 2005. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You tuned into the Jeff Hill Show. Just talking to KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson, we're going to get into probation if a child is raped in Colorado. Probation for the offender if a child is raped in Colorado. Is this really happening? George Brauchler with an opinion piece in the Denver Gazette. Yes, it is. And efforts by Brandi, Bradley, and others to try to address this, even in a bipartisan manner, have failed down at the Colorado State Capitol. We're going to talk with George Brauchler, District Attorney for Judicial District 23, and Brandi Bradley, the state representative trying to fix this problem. We're going to give you some insight into this that's probably going to shock you. What is going on in the state of Colorado? You're not going to want to miss it. But first, news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. 12 and cloudy in Denver, cold outside. Expecting a high of 23 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, 47's executive order to stop the production of pennies could affect the Denver Mint, which is just one of two in the country that makes the coins. Producing pennies has become a losing proposition for the U.S. Mint, which estimates it lost more than $85 million making the coins last year. Over $1 billion of those pennies were produced in Denver and shipped around the U.S. The King of Jordan will visit the White House today. King Abdullah II will be the first Arab leader to meet with the president since he started his second term. The meeting comes after the president floated a proposal to take over the Gaza Strip and have Palestinians move to countries such as Jordan and Egypt. Imagine that. See what King Abdullah says today. 47 says if Hamas doesn't release the remaining Israeli hostages by Saturday, then all hell will break out.
Cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday. And if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock. And after that, I would say all hell is going to.
And Israel says that Hamas is in violation of the ceasefire deal. Congress is set to hear 2 days of testimony from Fed Chair Jerome Powell starting today. This comes as Elon appears to be backing the idea of former Congressman Ron Paul replacing Powell. DJT slammed the central bank last month and blamed Powell for not stopping inflation. Doge continues to expose the corruption in government, and the left doesn't like it. The entitlement continues. Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas, incredible statesperson.
So let me tell you something, Mr. Trump. You're going to learn a few lessons from us. And I'm going to be the first one. You and your little friend off of Twitter. Y'all about to find out, all right? Now, y'all know he likes to pound around with Putin, right? He's trying to turn us into Russia.
Wow, trying to turn us into Russia, okay. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is ordering Fort Liberty in North Carolina to be named Fort Bragg once again. According to Hegseth, the military installation is being renamed after Private First Class Roland L. Bragg, who served during World War II. The post was originally named in honor of Confederate General Braxton Bragg in 1918. Jagmeet Singh, Canadian Parliament, flexing his muscles regarding tariffs with America.
Yeah, the first step is going to be dollar for dollar retaliatory tariffs. Impose a tariff on us, we'll impose a tariff back on you. Again, no one wins in these trade wars, but this is not a fight that we wanted to pick. We were happy to continue to have a strong relationship. Donald Trump has picked this fight, so we're going to fight back. We just announced today, what I would do is put in place a 100% tariff on Tesla, directly targeting Elon Musk. Because Elon Musk is proudly touting this idea of the 51st state, so let's hit back at Elon Musk. I've also said we should shut down the supply of critical minerals. Another move that directly targets Elon Musk and his Tesla company. The batteries that he needs require these critical minerals. We've got tools, and we should be ready to use them. It's not something that we wanted to do, but if Donald Trump wants to bring this fight, know that we are ready. I'm putting Donald Trump.
All right, we'll see how that works out for Jagmeet. One person is dead after a plane crash near Phoenix, another plane crash involving a jet owned by Motley Crue lead singer Vince Neil. 3 people were taken to hospitals, 2 with life-threatening injuries. Neil was not on the plane. However, his girlfriend was and currently in the hospital with broken ribs. The Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show is underway in New York City. Around 2,500 dogs representing more than 200 breeds are taking part in the annual event that ends tonight with the crowning of Best in Show.
Why do they have them run away from them and then back up? What's the point of that? What are they looking for?
Looking for the gait and movement of the dog, and it's very important to see the small angles. So Edie will be checking out this in particular.
Good way to judge a woman. Have her run away from you and then run back. You know, those birds on the Carnaby Street.
Yes.
I'm used to seeing them run away from me more often than run towards me.
The late, great Fred Willard. Nuggets, I have to listen to the rest of that
You're
movie
absolutely going to make me watch that movie. I watched it
obsessed.
in college. I haven't watched it since.
You probably didn't like it because you were too young then.
I think so.
I think
Yeah.
you'll like just sit back and just let it breathe. It's awesome. Fred Willard makes it so good. Check it out, man. I'm going to be disappointed if you don't, and disappointed if you don't like it, but you may not like it.
But,
I love it, man.
Look, your comedy changes as
Yes.
you get older in life. And I remember I watched like A Mighty Wind or the one where they turn the volume up to 11, and it never really connected with me
Right.
in the same way
get
that like
it.
a Tommy Boy or Office Space did. But I'm going to give it another shot today.
I think it holds
I'm in my
up.
40s now.
I think, but regardless of what you say, it's top 3. Nuggets blow out the Blazers last night. Luka Doncic in his first game with the Lakers, 14 points, 10 in Englewood. Let's see, we've got 9 in Brighton and 11 in Denver, 11 or 12. Jeff and Billy continue.
You know, it'd be funny. I don't know if they can do this. Just an idea off the top of my head. Why did he put on one of those Sherlock Holmes hats and put a little pipe in his mouth? Are they ever allowed to do anything like that? Dress up a dog in a funny way?
No, that's it's not quite what the purpose.
All right, maybe Jeff and Bill will. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A winter weather advisory is in effect from early this afternoon through late Wednesday morning. Arctic air is going to collide with Pacific moisture. Cold today, some fog, some flurries early in the day, highs reaching the low to mid-20s and falling back to the teens. By mid-afternoon, a steady light snow will develop. Snow will be likely tonight, lingering into Wednesday morning. Lows tonight will be single digits, highs tomorrow teens. Could see about 2 to 5 inches of new snow by early Wednesday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
This is the right walk-in music for our next guest. He takes on the bad guys out there. He wrote a piece in the Denver Gazette. This is going to be a gut punch for you. In Colorado, a man who rapes a child, as long as it is just once, can get probation, as in walk right out of the courtroom after conviction. But it is much worse than that. If that same man goes on to rape 9 other children, as long as he only rapes them each once, that child rapist is also eligible for probation. That statement remains true even if the child rapist is a teacher, member of clergy, sports coach, or any other person in a position of trust in relation to those children. the author of that piece. George Brauchler, District Attorney for Judicial District 23. He now joins us. What the hell, George?
Buddy, I don't know what to say about it other than that it is such an injustice and it is so easily fixable. And yet I'm here to tell you that my guess is Brandi Bradley's bill, great representative from Douglas County, probably dies in committee when it goes there.
I mean, it died last year, right?
Yeah, it was a little different last year. She tried to focus on getting mandatory prison for those who solicit children for prostitution, engage in the prostitution of children, all that other stuff. Another no-brainer for anyone who has or gives a crap about kids, but much harder for the progressives that see society as the problem. Hey, can I do a quick shout out, by the way? There's a class listening to you guys right now, a high school class, a kick-butt criminal justice class headed by a guy named Mr. Paul out there at Rock Canyon. I just want to give them a big shout out. Maybe the best looking, smartest kids in all of education. But anyway, they're listening right now.
Nice. Now remember, George, next time you have a chance to chat with them, remember, tell them, do not listen to anything I'm saying. Because that's just
no,
they
know.
Okay, good.
I sent a note ahead of time.
Oh, good. Okay, as long as you clear that up. Good. Okay. Appreciate that. Okay, good. Okay, continue.
Oh, George, how have we gotten to a place where this is even a possibility in our criminal justice system?
I don't know. I think that to get to this point where you think that probation ought to be on the table for everyone, potentially, you have to convince yourself that there are a set of facts where you're like, yeah, that's bad, but not bad enough to take away your liberty. Like, whoops, I fell into my student or something like that. I don't know what those facts are. And that's why Brandi Bradley's bill is such a no-brainer. And in fact, it's bipartisan. It has a Democrat representative co-sponsoring the bill with her. That says something.
And yet we're going to talk to Brandi Bradley in just a little bit. I mean, the fact that this is even a reach in Colorado is shocking. Why'd you choose to write this article? Why are you choosing to elevate this issue?
I think two reasons. One, new judicial district, new opportunity to try to change the dynamic and the conversation on this. And you can see from November's election, the rest of Colorado and America, frankly, they're tired of this excuse-driven, offender-centric approach to law enforcement. What they're looking for is accountability, whether it's immigration or anything else. Accountability is the name of the game. But the other thing is Brandi Bradley's had the courage to come forward again, run uphill into withering fire from the progressive opponents and say, I'm going to fight for what's right, whether you're going to make it law or not. But here's the other thing. I think this thing, with your help and other folks, it's going to get enough traction. You're going to see this thing on the ballot. And I put that at the end of the column. This thing, along with bills like Representative Hartsook and Senator Frizzell have put on, common sense bills where people are going to read them and go, duh, and they're going to vote for them at the same time as guys like Phil Weiser and John Hickenlooper are on the ballot.
Well, let's talk about that breakdown that takes place here. So here you have done a really good job explaining how we have very serious gaps addressing criminals in our communities. And yet people will vote for those lawmakers that are ignoring these gaps. And then at the same time, when it's on the ballot, like we saw this last cycle, where we're going to now put, I think it was $350 million towards a police support fund, that won pretty good. People are calling for stronger law enforcement, but then are willing to put into power elected officials that are ignoring that call. Help me understand that gap that exists there, George Brauchler.
Yeah, the gap, some of that is still lingering demographics and the way we do voting and stuff in Colorado. But, you know, that gap's going to continue to narrow. And if these things go on the ballot, imagine, and I'm presuming Joe Neguse doesn't jump in the race, because if he does, it's over. He becomes the Democrat nominee. But whoever the Democrat nominee is going to have to answer the question, hey, Democrat nominee, on the ballot is a proposition to make mandatory prison for child rapists. Do you support it? Now think about what answers they could give. It'll either be an obvious dodge, a campaign killing no, or they're going to have to get on board and say yes. Those are the kinds of things that over an election cycle or two, I think really change the dynamic for us in terms of outcome. Remember back when marijuana was on the ballot? I think that single issue fundamentally changed the outcome of that election.
Yeah.
2012.
Yep.
That election should have been a Mitt Romney election. But in Colorado, and you can't explain away all the other states, but in Colorado, things went horribly south, in my opinion, because marijuana got on the ballot. We do the same thing with these common sense criminal justice, protect the kid issues. I think we see the same kind of outcome on our side.
Talking to George Brauchler, he's the district attorney for Judicial District 23. Now, George, you brought up the fact there's a high school class listening to this right now. Let's talk the importance of elevating this issue as you move a policy issue forward, whether it's this issue, which is a gut punch, or other political issues. It starts somewhere, right? Help educate the students on the importance of raising the issue, talking about the issue, putting pressure on lawmakers, and how you actually advance an agenda in a republic like ours.
Yeah, the first thing is exactly what we're doing here. Between Brandi, Bradley, I'm starting this conversation. Other folks have jumped in. I mean, listen, your reaction, Jeff, is the reaction of probably most everybody listening to this. Like, you got to be kidding me. You're telling me that someone can rape a kid and get probation? That can't be the law because it doesn't make sense. And yet that's the law in the state of Colorado. So you start by highlighting the issue and starting a conversation. And when it's a no-brainer, there doesn't need to be any finesse with this. If you're the person trying to explain away why probation should be an option for a child rapist, you are on the fringe. You start there. Then you elevate the conversation through the radio, the TV, through the newspapers, the columns, through these kids go home and tell mom and dad, hey, you know what we learned in class today? In Colorado, you can rape a kid and get probation. And mom and dad go, I think you got that wrong, son or daughter. That can't be true. Then they start looking it up. And pretty soon that conversation turns into something more. I've encouraged people through social media, reach out to your legislators and tell them what you think. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that our gold dome is so broken in the hands that currently control it, that this is really just a preface to the novel that's going to end up being written on the ballot. And you're going to see more of these issues pop up there. I mean, look, Michael Fields has shown this dude's a superhero when it comes to getting things passed on the ballot. You get him to take up an issue like this, the one that Hartsook and Frizzell have that'll help seek to protect cops. All of a sudden, we're changing the conversation and the dynamic during a time that the Democrats want to talk about being an inclusive sanctuary city. Coloradans are talking about, can we please lock up child rapists?
Talking with George Brauchler, he wrote a piece in the Denver Gazette titled Probation for Child Rape in Colorado. Yes, really. Now, final question on this, and then I want to get to what happened at main event. Have you seen evidence that child rapists are being let out on probation? I know that this is a gap, but is it one that's being exploited?
Yeah, so great point. Two different parts of this analysis. One is, has it happened in the state of Colorado? Yes, it has happened in the state of Colorado. In fact, I asked my chief of our special victims unit, which covers all the sex assaults on children, and she said, yes, it has happened. Not in the 23rd. We're too new for that, but back in the old 18th before me. The other thing that happens, though, is when you make a charge probation eligible and you come to the table to negotiate a potential outcome with a child rapist, especially one where there's a reluctant set of parents or child on the other side that you don't want to traumatize, instead of having a mallet that you can use to say, you can take X number of years or go to trial and risk the additional ones, you end up having a ball-peen hammer. And you go to them and you say, well, please take prison, or if not, you're going to re-traumatize this kid, and at the end of the day, the judge might give you probation. It's a tool that prosecutors can have to try to get to some sort of justice with also the promise of prison for these folks. And by the way, if there is a fact pattern that is so mitigated that an adult teacher could end up having sex with some under 15-year-old student, and people go, yeah, prison isn't appropriate, prosecutors are still armed with the ability to take that mandatory prison away. But leaving it in the hands of judges alone, I don't trust it.
Talking with George Brauchler, District Attorney for Judicial District 23. Now, over the weekend, heartbreaking activity at Main Event. Main Event, this great family-friendly location in Highlands Ranch where you got bowling, you got rock climbing, laser tag, tons of video games. George, I've probably gone to 50 birthday parties at that exact location. There was a shooting that took place in the restroom, CBS News reporting, and then a shooting that took place outside in the parking lot, law enforcement involved shooting that took place there. Can you give us any updates on the process that's going to be happening now in light of what happened at the main event in Highlands Ranch over the weekend?
Yeah, I can. And Jeff, ditto. If folks are trying to picture what this place is like, it's kind of like a Boondocks or a place where you've got bowling and video games, very family friendly, also appeals to bowling leagues. It's right there by AMC 24 Highlands Ranch and across the street from Red Robin. I mean, it's a family place, right? So I've been there with my kids a jillion times too. I can picture this thing going down. So the woman who we have accused of, and we haven't actually filed formal charges yet, the woman arrested on probable cause for attempted first-degree murder and some other charges yet to be named. She got in front of a judge yesterday, which you have to do. Cops can't just grab up someone and hold on to them forever. They get to have their day in court. And that magistrate set a bond of $1 million cash, property, or surety. Practically speaking, someone's going to have to come up with about $150,000 cash to secure the rest. That bond isn't forever. A future judge can change it. The trick is that anytime there's an officer involved shooting, there are 3 investigations that launch simultaneously, and that's what's happened here. One of them is the underlying crime. That's the woman that we've accused, and she's presumed innocent, okay? These are just accusations. The woman accused of the attempted murder. That's one investigation. The second investigation is an internal affairs investigation where Douglas County Sheriff's Office will do its own checking of its officer to see if they complied with the rules and regulations on the use of force. The third one is the one that involves the critical incident response team. There's a 23rd Judicial District one. It's made up of all the agencies in the 23rd Judicial District. They contribute the best of the best detectives to this thing. And what happens is we take Douglas County out of the equation, and detectives from every other agency grab up the shooting itself and analyze it from the standpoint of, was there a crime committed here? Was there an appropriate lawful use of force by that officer who shot and killed that other guy with the gun in the parking lot? Now, listen, this came out in court yesterday, so I'm happy to repeat this thing. The people involved, not only the person shot, but the person doing the shooting, the person she shot at, none of those people are from Douglas County. They're all from somewhere else, like Denver and Aurora. They came down here to do some sort of activity, I presume midnight bowling or hanging out or something like that, and things went horribly wrong in that bathroom, and we're going to figure out exactly what they were. The other thing that's true is that there's some stuff on social media that says that the guy that was shot in the parking lot was a good Samaritan who grabbed the gun from the shooter and was trying to do. They're not the same gun. That is not accurate. There's more information that will be released when it's appropriate at another time, especially through Senate Bill 217, which you may remember is the post-George Floyd transparency bill. So body-worn camera will be released. Other video will be released in compliance with that law. But right now, those 3 investigations are underway. And without prejudging them, we're going to get to the truth one way or the other.
Heartbreaking to see it happen to a place that many family members, especially this listening audience, attend that location, attend parties, take their kids there, and appreciate you guys being on top of it. The sheriff calling for any tips. If you were there, heard anything, saw anything, you can call 303-660-7549. That's 303-660-7549. George, a lot of text messages coming in appreciating you raising this issue, fighting these stupid sentencing guidelines. Thanks so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show. Give us some insight on that breakdown on the sentencing guidelines, but also what happened at main event over the weekend. Thank you.
For sure.
Yes,
And cheer on Brandi Bradley, man. She is a hero on this thing. We got to get her into the end zone on it.
That's exactly right. Agreed. And speaking of that, Brandi Bradley is going to be joining us in just a few minutes.
Thank you so much, George.
You're not going to want to miss that. George is a very busy guy, unfortunately.
Yes, he is. And hello to the kids, the students. Yes.
I think back to the fact he could be the governor of this state. How great that would be.
Yeah. It would be a different person. AG. I'd take that.
I would take AG too. You do a fantastic job as AG.
I'd take AG, but well. Man. I know.
What we could have. By the way, that shooting that took place, CBS News reporting that the victim was shot 8 times.
Ooh.
8 times in the bathroom and survived.
Jeez. Wow. Survived. Someone, okay.
Then outside in the parking lot, responding deputies shot and killed a man who allegedly wouldn't put down a gun he was carrying.
Yeah, that's one that I just have questions over what the circumstances are. I'm not drawing conclusions one way or the other, but that's just an odd one that for whatever reason, when the guys with the badges and the flashy lights tell you to put down the gun and you don't.
Right,
That choice is
exactly.
I'm just curious. I'm like, why? There's obviously a motivation there. What's the motivation? And I'm super curious also about the fight that led to the shooting inside of the bathroom. And then also, how come we had a gun in the bathroom? Yeah, just a whole bunch of things that, okay, I'm going to go to main event. One thing I can't forget is, oh yeah, my firearm. Okay, of all the things that you want to take with you, where's that ranking? Again, yeah, so many questions. But sure, let's keep
somebody
it updated.
text in, and I'm going to keep them anonymous here.
Yeah.
They said that the family member of theirs was a serial pedophile, served only 16 years max from the 1980s. It should be life. And I know a person now who's in the is the same and is on probation because of age. This man has hurt over 6 decades. So over 60 years. What's wrong with Colorado? One is too many. Anyone who researches and knows the likes of these evil monsters knows there's never one victim.
Yeah. And the rate of recidivism for someone involved in molestation and pedophilia is incredibly high. It is something that is incredibly difficult to break away from and get out of that cycle, especially once you've absorbed that psychologically, as far as that's what you're chasing.
Yeah.
And it's almost, in some ways, it becomes like someone that has an incredibly hardcore drug habit, that in order to get to the next high, you have to change something that's worse. And so you start out with, maybe it's just looking at the pictures, and then you need to get something else, and then something else. And now eventually you're approaching kids, and now you're grooming kids that are near you. And then after that, you go on to kids that are outside of your influence. And then eventually you just got to go grab yourself a kid. I mean, it gets the where this arc goes is very, very dangerous, and very rarely are you able to, on your own or without some sort of intervention, curtail it before it gets into something really drastic and awful. So yeah,
And I don't even
this is
know
an
what
issue.
that intervention is.
Well, some of that is putting them behind bars.
Right.
That's part of
But,
it
like,
too.
can
To
you-
prevent access to victims is something that would really help in the situations.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, happy to hear from you all. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. I put this in the category, again, that Democrats constantly focus on the wrong things. Like, they're really, really passionate. And George even brings this up in his article. Really passionate about things that are not nearly as critical as addressing some of this. And then the fact that they won't. The fact that someone like Brandi Bradley has brought legislation in a bipartisan manner for Colorado House and Senate Democrats to address this gap, and they don't. My goodness. We're going to talk to Brandi Bradley next. What happened last year? What is she expecting this year? Is she getting any signs and hints from leadership about this? You're not going to want to miss this conversation. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Awayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
Elon Musk is calling for the impeachment of the Obama-appointed judge who banned Doge and the Treasury Secretary from accessing payment systems at the U.S. Treasury, just as Musk was set to audit the trillions in payments being made with American tax dollars. Democrats sued to stop Doge from gaining access and selected Judge Paul Engelmayer, who then held a hearing without DOJ lawyers present. The ruling did not cite any case law or precedent, leaving holes for appeal, with many saying this is just an effort to delay Trump's effort to eliminate waste, fraud, and overspending from the federal government. Musk saying, quote, "A corrupt judge protecting corruption. He needs to be impeached now." Adding in another post, what happens is that those who want the government corruption and waste to continue will shop around the country for an activist judge to do their bidding. It is an undemocratic and unconstitutional power grab by a tiny group of radical leftists. President Donald Trump has ordered the U.S. to stop minting pennies. The announcement comes after decades of unsuccessful efforts to phase out the 1-cent coin that costs almost 4 cents a penny to make. Advocates for ditching the penny cite its high production cost and limited utility. Fans of the penny cite its usefulness in charity drives and relative bargain in production cost compared with the nickel.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Ohio, Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We just heard from George Brauchler. Yes, probation for child rape is an option in Colorado. Now, the lawmaker, and as you heard from George, the real fighter in this, trying to address this, is Representative Brandi Bradley from Douglas County. She joins us now. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning, guys. So happy to be on. Thank you.
So tell us about your bill. You tried to run something similar last year. Let's start there. You tried to run it last year, and it didn't go anywhere. What happened?
a different bill last year. We were trying to put anyone that panders, prostitutes, solicits minors for sex in jail with a minimum sentencing. We know the Democrats don't like, most Democrats, I should say, don't like minimum sentences. But the lobby came to us and just said, we can't put people in jail that don't put their hands on kids when people that rape children don't go to jail. So Representative English and I decided to bring a bill back to put people who actually assault children in jail first, and then we will handle the second part of that next year.
So the bill this year, House Bill 25-1073, protections against child rape concerning criminal sentencing for persons who commit certain types of sexual assault on a child and connection therewith, requiring a mandatory minimum period of incarceration for a Class 4 and a Class 3 felony. Give us a sense of what you're hearing from House and Senate leadership on this bill.
Well, I'm hearing it's going to die. And I'm hearing it's going to die because they don't like indeterminate sentencing. However, I did not make those rules. These rules for indeterminate sentencing were put in Colorado revised statutes long before I became a lawmaker. I didn't make the rules. I just added that we are going to take probation off for felony 3 and felony 4 sexual assault on a child. So it's interesting when they come to me and say I'm taking away judicial discretion and all these other things. No, these were the laws of the land long before Brandi Bradley.
And so they believe that judges should have total discretion on this, and that somehow, because we're requiring this, we're not treating these criminals well or abusing their human rights or something. What's going on?
Well, I am hearing that they feel like criminals are staying in jail for too long, but we know that that's a red herring. We know that these people, there's a wait list on the DOC, and a lot of people included in the wait list are not even parole eligible once they have received this treatment. Some of these offenders don't want to receive the treatment, which is part of their ability to even become parole eligible. Some of these offenders will never see the light of day. They will never get out because they've raped so many different children. So the wait list includes all of these different people, which it shouldn't. There might be 1 or 2 that are past their parole eligibility, but that's it. So it's a red herring that they're trying to throw out there. We know from my fiscal note that 70 different offenders got off on probation only after raping a child last year. 70.
Ooh, that is scary. Now, Brandi Bradley, state representative, joining Jeff and Bill live, talking about why that people that rape children can get probation here in Colorado. Brandi, just out of curiosity, have you asked the opponents of this bill if they believe that probation is ever the right punishment for raping a child? Have they ever talked to you? And I understand playing the game of, oh, well, this is what the rules say and the laws say. You guys are the body and you can change the laws. But has anyone ever justified the fact that someone who has raped a child deserves probation?
I'm going to go on a limb and say that I don't think that anyone that I work with believes that. I think that they have a problem with the indeterminate sentencing, but I will tell you that Senator Mike Wiseman came to me about the indeterminate sentencing, and he's running the most unconstitutional gun bill in the state that we've ever seen. So, the hypocrisy is evident in this building, right?
Yeah, it is. Now, the question I've got with the people that are pushing on the indeterminate sentencing, I understand. But if we were going to err on the side of keeping prisoners in jail too long, wouldn't the people that rape the kids be the people that we may say, you know what, even if we're going to keep them in jail too long, that's okay? I can think of a lot of different crimes in which indeterminate sentencing makes a lot of sense as far as, well, has this person actually paid the price to society? Are we keeping them in too long? Is this extraneous? I get it. But when you're involved with sexual activity with a minor, and we're talking about something that is forcible, either involving a coercion or what have you, why are these lawmakers not okay with erring on the side of keeping them in prison longer? I just can't get my mind around the justification of, oh, Well, the one group of people that we need to get grace for, we need to give them an extra chance to maybe go outside where they have such a high recidivism rate, are the people that are touching the kids. If there's any group of people, I would put, murderers and maybe the child molesters. Those could be the two people I think we could all agree should maybe stay in prison a little bit longer than what may be required if we had to make the error, if we had to.
Well, and 75% of these offenders are child rapists, and the longest DOC time that any of them have gotten is 25 years. So they're not in there for their natural life, which is another red herring that I think that they say that we're locking them up for life. That's not true. These people do not, they pretty much go through the sex offender treatment program and they get paroled and they're back out on the street. So these people we're not locking them up for life. And I'll tell you that we just had the Department of Youth Corrections come, and I asked them, these kids that are in your department that are, doing other things to hurt other people, tell me about their lives. These are children that have been raped, violently, sexually assaulted, or physically assaulted by people in our community. And now we're pipelining these children into the juvenile justice system and into the jails. So is that fair to these kids to not lock up the adults that are harming them and not give them the chance at life? And that's what's so frustrating to me, that you put your hands on these kids and then you pipeline them into a life of crime, essentially.
Ooh, Brandi. Okay, Brandi Bradley, state representative, joining Jeff and Bill live. I think you've hit on something there, that when you get into conversations, debate, when you're talking about this, I think you've hit on something there about the impact on the child. And given where the Democrats come from, as far as all the squishy, touchy-feeling, ideas, more times than not, maybe you have a lever to pull, asking opponents why they care more about the adult than keeping the child safe. This is a person that has violated the trust and has impacted a child for the rest of their life. This child is going to be dealing with this trauma forever. Why?
I agree.
Why would you possibly give them an out? Why would you possibly turn to the adult and say, well, we have to figure out how this is impacting you? I think that's a ask, because why would they be more concerned about the impact on the adult life than the trauma that has been created for the child? I can't wrap my head around that. Why you would defend the adult rather than the child?
Well, I think that's one of my main points. I mean, children deserve to have a good life. And when you have adults taking their power and coercion and assaulting a child, I can't wrap my head around it either, Bill, to be quite honest. These people deserve prison. They deserve to go through a sexual treatment program. And a lot of these prisoners won't admit to talk about their sexual preferences and why they offended, and they won't seek the treatment. So why would we give probation to anyone like that?
Yeah, I keep thinking also of the individual that's gone through the trauma, or even the parent that has to talk to the kid and say, you know what, the person that did this to you, they're on probation. They're out. They have the opportunity to go and seek out other victims. And the reason I bring that up is because of the recidivism rate being so high in this population. It is more likely they are going to go after more victims than not. This is one group that seems to not have learned their lesson by being behind bars and having their freedoms restricted. And that's the question, is how many of these opponents of the bill would want to have to turn and talk to a member of their family about how the person that violated them in one of the worst ways possible now is free to go and seek more victims? How many opponents of this bill wants to have that conversation with a friend, a family member, a child that they know, to explain the person that committed the crime now has the opportunity to do it again?
Right. I mean, the parents, I can't imagine if something like this happened to my son. The other explanation is that this is a crime of black men, and we know that it's not. When we look at the fiscal impact, we know that this is a white crime. We know that this is happening in churches. We know it's happening in schools. We know it's happening by soccer coaches. And when the liberal people in my district say, well, why aren't you going after the churches? I'm going after anyone that assaults a child. If you put your hands on a child and assault them and sexually rape them, I want you behind bars. I don't care who you are and what you look like. You deserve to go to jail.
Talking to Representative Brandi Bradley. She's got a new bill out, House Bill 251073, protections against child rape. She's not optimistic it's going to pass here in Colorado. We need to hold our elected officials accountable to this. And I am so glad, as George Brauchler said, you are a titan fighting this down at the Colorado State Capitol. Thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill show this morning.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm emotional about this one. I'm all on your side. You got to fight as hard as you possibly can for this. This is a bunch of crap, all those opponents. And tell them, Brandi, if they want to defend their position, you know how I operate. Tell them they're more than welcome to call the show. Come and be a guest. Well, I'll be more than happy to debate them with it. You know how that goes.
We'd love to have them on. You're doing great work, Representative
You are
Bradley.
great. And we didn't even yell at each other today. You're the best, Brandi. I love you so much. I really respect your work.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for putting this out there. I really appreciate it.
Keep up the hard fight. And I'm serious. Anybody that is an opponent of this bill, give them the invitation. We are ready any day of the week to talk to them about why they oppose this bill.
Yep.
The door is open.
Let
them know.
We'll call them out too.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much. Keep it up.
Do you know a high school student who has a passion for engaging in cultural and political issues? The knowledge and skills needed to impact the world through civic engagement is an ever-increasing need in today's society. Colorado Christian University is at the forefront of meeting this crucial need, equipping the next generation of competent, convictional Christian leadership in American politics. CCU's degree program in politics with an emphasis in public policy prepares students for the complex challenges of modern politics from an unapologetically Christian and foundationally conservative worldview. In this distinct program, students learn how to impact public policy and advance Christian conservative ideas. Colorado Christian University also houses the Centennial Institute, a think tank committed to mobilizing ideas on faith, family, and freedom to strengthen America's future. CCU's mission to produce graduates who impact the world with grace and truth applies in no greater measure than to our politics and public policy program. Apply today at ccu.edu/apply. That's ccu.edu/apply. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
The USAID has been in the spotlight recently as Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, aka DOGE, has been auditing the organization to figure out what American taxpayer dollars are being spent on and how his department can cut the waste, fraud, and overspending from the budget. Some of the payments he found are more than questionable, such as That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Ohio, Salem News Channel.
back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Just having a great conversation with George Brauchler and Brandi Bradley. There's a big gap in sentencing here in Colorado where an adult who rapes a child can get probation. She said 70 adults have been given probation for raping a child.
70 too many.
Absolutely. Melissa, Denver, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Morning. I just had three things. I'm just wondering where the 3 strikes you're out law applies anymore.
Good point.
Especially for crossing the border, but 3 times raping a kid is way too many in the first place. But then I'm wondering how come the Democrats are so happy to give kids that are healthy puberty blockers and stuff like that, but we're not. It's like it's cruel to medicate a pedophile. Like, isn't there something that we can give them?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Then I think part of this is probably grouped into the dumbing down of all the laws in case an illegal gets accused of it, and then they won't get deported if it's not a felony.
Yeah, it's the thing that I've got is I have problems with this. I get too emotional on this one because of all the things that I'm not going to let you do is to violate a kid. of all the things that I can lean into as far as, really getting to the dark part of my soul, as far as revenge and making sure that, you don't get the chance to do this again. This is one of them, because you're taking advantage of the safety, the security, and the innocence of someone that is much younger. And the thing, like you always hear, you have, younger boys and girls says, it's the person that was talking to them says, oh, you're awfully mature for your age. No, you're not. You're not awfully mature for your age. It's that everybody of that adult's age knows they're a creep. They don't deal with them. The women and men that are of their age won't deal with them because they understand what they're doing. You're too young to recognize it. They're trying to manipulate you by telling you you're awfully mature for your age. There's just so much that goes into this that is so wrong and so disgusting that.
I mean, Bill, I was watching.
me.
I read the book Spotlight. I was watching the movie over the weekend about how Boston Herald, Boston Globe, one of those newspapers went and exposed everything that was happening to the abuse of kids.
Yeah.
And then you get this.
I'm also
it's weird.
Sorry, one more thing. I'm wondering if they're trying to be nice to the pedophiles because they don't want to keep them in prison because they're not nice to them in prison either.
I don't
You're
know.
listening
Thanks,
to
Melissa.
the Jeff and Bill Show.
This
Thanks,
is
Melissa.
710 KNUS.
is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this chilly Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. This hour, we're going to be joined by Gino Geraci in a little bit. He's the host of Crosswalk 94.7 KRKS, our sister station here. Donald Trump seeking to eradicate anti-Christian bias in the government. Does it exist? He's got a long list of challenges and problems he has with the Biden administration's treatment of Christians. Is there an anti-Christian bias? We're going to get into that with Pastor Gino Geraci. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's go back to the phone lines before we get to Blake Olson with the news. Dwayne Divide. Good morning, Dwayne. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Bill, I wish you'd come out of your shell once in a while. Really
Yeah, I
would
got that
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want the most horrific things you can hear is your school calling you when your son says, "That's happening to me," when he's doing visitation.
Yeah.
And then you sit there and fight and you go and you rush and you deal with the detectives, you deal with everything. And then there's a little room where he goes in and talks to a psychologist. And if he doesn't say the 8 proper words, they don't advance on anything. And you stand there knowing that he's been violated. And you know that the situation has happened multiple times. And you spend over 6 figures in legal fees trying to keep him away. But Colorado has, the father and the parents have special rights that supersede yours. It doesn't matter whether you've done everything for him and been through every surgery and done everything for him and cared for him 28 hours a day, 9 days a week. The father can still come into his life and ruin it. And it's so wonderful because fathers have special rights in Colorado. I spent money and stood before the damn polls telling everybody, you vote for this woman, you're voting for a pedophile helper. I expected to go to jail and I would have done it with honor. At least she's out of our county and she's somewhere else. I'm sorry. Let me calm down and let you guys put a voice in.
I agree with you.
So, I mean, Dwayne is referencing a conversation we had with George Brauchler. He's got a great piece out in the Gazette that's just kind of a gut punch. It's shocking. Probation for child rape in Colorado. Yes, really. And Brandi Bradley's trying to run a bill to close this gap. It's a bipartisan bill. She's joined with Regina English, and the Democrats are, at this point, not likely to pass it.
Which again,
Representative Brantley needs to be called. Everybody needs to call and tell them to get Representative Brantley's bill in. Call every damn Democrat 10 times a day and sit there and say, this needs to end.
Yeah.
This truly needs to end. One child is too many. 70 is far too many. There's that part of me that's old cowboy up here in the mountains. I'd want to find somebody, wrap a C5 hold down chain around him, not around the neck because it'd be too quick. And I want to drag him. And I want to drag him so bad. And the sheriff looks at me and he goes, Dwayne, I know. He said, the moment I know what happens to him, I'm coming to you. And I said, you don't have to worry about me. I'll be in a room full of people. I'll tell you otherwise. But I want you to know that every day, I want that to happen.
Oh yeah, and I'm there with you. It's and I people are calling, and I hope they do. Call their state representatives, state senators, and ask about how they feel about this, and ask for the justification of why. That we want to know the why you're going to vote this way or the other way. Is push them on that. Is the justification. Is why you wouldn't want to protect kids in this manner from individuals that we know have a high rate of recidivism. They go out and they look for more victims. Many of them don't think they did anything wrong in the first place. They figure that you just don't understand them and they should be allowed to do this anyway. They feel it is completely and totally natural. I mean, we do have the National Man-Boy Love Association. So there are a lot of people that believe this is perfectly acceptable. And that's the question we need to ask, is the idea of why this would be acceptable, why you wouldn't want to hold these criminals accountable. Of all the criminals that you're choosing to hold accountable, why aren't these predators among the top 2?
Very simply, I can't endorse it legally, and I don't want to put your station at risk. But you shoot an animal that's mad. You sit there and put down a rabid dog. You take care of these things and all the rest. We need to chemically castrate, and we need to sit there and burn a god dang stupid, chomo on their foreheads, so we know exactly who they are, where they are, and everything else. I want this to end. I don't want anybody else to ever have to suffer through this.
Yeah.
He's bounced back out of it to a point, but every day I sit there and I suffer with it, and I don't want to brag about myself, and I hate the prideful thing on this, but I want this done. I cannot wait for this guy to assume room temperature so I can sit there and desecrate his grave. That is the point of how arguable and how hatred I am about this situation.
Oh, I get it, my friend. And the thing for me is that I'm there with you. There are times in which I understand that, the punishment after the crime is there to, rectify society. But there's part of me that also thinks that in cases like this, revenge is okay, as long as we are admitting that we are doing this out of revenge. For some of the things that you have voiced, Dwayne, I would be perfectly acceptable with, as long as we're honest about, we're doing this not because this is part of the criminal punishment, but because this is about the revenge that the family is deserved. And they do deserve this at some point in my mind. And I understand that's a dark place that both you and I are going, Dwayne. And so I'm not advocating on the air that this is what we need to do. But just saying, if it happens, I might be able to be persuaded to participate in that revenge. I'm just saying.
If I had a stage 4 cancer and they said you got 6 months, I can guarantee you in the first one what I'll be doing and standing there before a microphone every damn day until I'm finished going, it was worth it, it's justified, and we need to end this.
Hey,
sorry.
It may be a bad thing to say on the air, Dwayne, but I just might drive you there. Just saying.
Dwayne, I appreciate the passion. More importantly, I appreciate the love you have for the child that's in your life and the justice you want to see have done. Thank you so very much for that call. Let's check in on news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jeff and Billy. I'm right there with you, Dwayne. 13 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 23. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, progressives in Colorado support no prison for child rapists. What? Are you kidding me? Yes, probation only. Seriously? Randy Bradley, Patriot, fights against it, and George Brauchler wrote a piece in the Gazette about the subject. The District 23 DA on with Jeff and Billy last hour.
The rest of Colorado and America, frankly, they're tired of this excuse-driven, offender-centric approach to law enforcement. What they're looking for is accountability, whether it's immigration or anything else. Accountability is the name of the game. But the other thing is Brandi Bradley's had the courage to come forward again, run uphill into withering fire from the progressive opponents and say, I'm going to fight for what's right, whether you're going to make it law or not. But here's the other thing. I think this thing, with your help and other folks, it's going to get enough traction. You're going to see this thing on the ballot. And I put that at the end of the column. This thing, along with bills like Representative Hartsook and Senator Frizzell have put on, common sense bills where people are going to read them and go, duh, and they're going to vote for them at the same time as guys like Phil Weiser and John Hickenlooper are on.
Yes, George Brauchler once again. Speaking of children, Border Patrol starting to hit the cartels hard, including child trafficking. Stephen Miller.
And the U.S. military is repatriating illegal immigrants at a pace and a skill that has never occurred before in American history. And those who are committing human trafficking and child trafficking are being prosecuted for felony offenses, and they'll be doing hard time in jail. There's never been a lockdown like what you have implemented through your orders and vision since you took the oath of office.
And, of course, Stephen Miller talking about DJT. A federal appeals court has dismissed the case against 2 of President Trump's co-defendants in the probe of his handling of classified documents. Total rig job by the commies. Trump aide Walt Nada and former Mar-a-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira were charged in 2023. They were accused of obstructing Biden's Justice Department with their corrupt investigation. The DOJ requested the case against Nada and de Oliveira be dropped. The dismissal formally ends the last special counsel, Greasy Jack Smith, and all his garbage. DJT is set to meet with the King of Jordan today. King Abdullah II will be the first Arab leader to visit Trump in the White House since he started his second term. The meeting comes after the president floated a proposal to take over the Gaza Strip and resettle Palestinians living in the occupied territory to neighboring countries such as Jordan and Egypt. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is testifying before lawmakers on Capitol Hill. His appearance comes as Elon, head of Doge, appears to be backing the idea of former Congressman Ron Paul replacing Powell as chair of the central bank. This is the first of 2 days of testimony for Powell, with the second tomorrow. 47 may announce reciprocal tariffs as soon as today. Trump said he would be announcing a very sophisticated plan for reciprocal tariffs against what he said would be every country. It comes after Trump signed executive orders Monday to bring 25% tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. Elon is making a $92 billion bid for controlling interest in OpenAI, the startup that he helped found. The Chat GPT company CEO, Sam Altman, dismissed the offer with a post on X offering to, quote, buy Twitter for $9.74 billion instead. According to Page 6, Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert and Kid Rock were seen getting into a cab together at 2:30 in the morning the night of Trump's inauguration. News to me. I know nothing. If I see her at the store, I'll ask her about it. Nuggets run past the Blazers, and Luka Doncic in his first game with the Lakers of 14 points last night. It's 10 in Lone Tree, 11 in Broomfield, and 13 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on this Tuesday.
What are the donuts that we are choosing? So, Jeff, you get first crack.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A winter weather advisory is in effect from early this afternoon through late Wednesday morning. Arctic air is going to collide with Pacific moisture. Cold today. Some fog, some flurries early in the day, highs reaching the low to mid-20s and falling back to the teens. By mid-afternoon, a steady light snow will develop. Snow will be likely tonight, lingering into Wednesday morning. Lows tonight will be single digits, highs tomorrow teens. Could see about 2 to 5 inches of new snow by early Wednesday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, is there anti-Christian bias in our government? Donald Trump thinks so. He put together a executive order to address this. These are some of the claims he has in his executive order. The Biden Department of Justice brought felony charges and obtained multi-year prison sentences against nearly 24 pro-life Christians for praying and peacefully demonstrating outside abortion facilities. The Biden Department of Justice ignored hundreds of attacks on Catholic churches, charities, and pro-life centers. In 2023, an FBI memo asserted that traditional Catholics were domestic terrorism threats and suggested infiltrating Catholic churches as a threat mitigation. The Biden Department of Education sought to repeal religious liberty protections for faith-based organizations on college campuses. The Biden Equal Employment Opportunity Commission sought to force Christians to affirm radical transgender ideologies against their faith. The Biden Department of Health and Human Services sought to drive Christians out of the foster care system. And in 2024, the Biden administration declared Easter Sunday as Transgender Day of Visibility. Bill, I think that was the day we had the most phone calls ever in the history of the show. It was the Monday after that took place. So, is there an anti-Christian bias? Does it need to be addressed? Donald Trump wants to create a work group led by the secretary of every single department, being a member of it. It is going to be managed by the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to review policies within each department within the federal government to determine if there are anti-Christian biases. To join us, to give us some insight, to have a conversation, you know the name, you know the voice, Gino Geraci. He's the host of Crosswalk on 94.7 KRKS, our sister station. Pastor Geraci, thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Got you loud and clear, sir. So thoughts on this executive order?
Well, I think that it's interesting. Obviously, on the executive order, we have to ask and answer the question, is it necessary?
Did we lose him?
I don't know. He's like right there. There he is. Oh, you're breaking up on us a little bit, Gino.
Yeah, start over again, please.
Yeah, I think what we have to do is we have to ask that question. Has the United States government exercised bias against Christian or religious citizens? And, is this a policy change, a cultural shift? What is actually going on? And I was interested in, the conversation that you had a little bit earlier about the pedophiles getting probation. So imagine you have, not that I'm saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, that a Tina Peters gets 9 years in prison and a person guilty of child sexual assault gets probation. Imagine a Jack Phillips, a baker, gets fined $173,000 by the Denver Civil Rights Commission, and a person found guilty of child sexual assault in South Carolina gets fined $17,000. So how do you explain that? Is this equal justice under the law, or is there, in fact, bias?
Talking with Pastor Gino Geraci, the host of Crosswalk 94.7 KRKS. Pastor, when it comes to folks like Jack Phillips, absolutely. If you go back and you look at the court case that took him the first time all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, the government officials that were appointed to be a part of the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, okay? These are people appointed by the governor to look at civil rights abuses. We're equating Jack Phillips's belief in traditional marriage, and this was Orthodox Christian thought. There's nothing extreme here. This is what the Bible teaches. This is what churches for nearly all of history have embraced. The idea that marriage is the definition between one man and one woman. Simply holding that belief and wanting to practice your business in accordance with it was equivalent to being a Nazi, to being a racist, to being some of the worst ideas out there. That was held not by progressive activists outside carrying a banner, but by the exact people that were overseeing the Civil Rights Commission. And the first case was kicked down because it was so egregious in their bias.
Well, and so we're back to, is the president's commission justified? And I think that there's good reason to believe that it is justified, that there has been a real problem. And so we're still left with that delicate balance of religious liberty versus equality. I understand that that there's a growing group of people who believes that by exercising religious beliefs, that somehow we diminish LGBTQ plus rights. But again, we're left with that real horrible, terrible tension, and that is, if a Christian believes that something is wrong, to criminalize the belief that it's wrong. Let me give you an example. We legalize same-sex marriage, but then you criminalize the belief that same-sex marriage is sinful or wrong. Imagine we criminalize prostitution, and then all of a sudden we don't criminalize prostitution, but then we criminalize the belief that prostitution is morally wrong. And so that's the great place or the divide that we find ourselves as a culture, as Americans.
Talking with Gino Geraci, he's the host of Crosswalk 94.7 KRKS. Now, what the President Trump wants to do is he wants each of the departments to go look at their policies and report back within 120 days or so and determine if there are actual activities taking place within the FBI, within the Department of the Treasury, within the EPA, within the Housing and Human Services, within the Department of Education, that are actually motivated by anti-Christian bias. Now, the report hasn't been produced. We don't know what it's going to show, but it seems like from that list that he put together, there's plenty of reason to believe that at least under the Biden administration, there was an anti-Christian bias driving some of those activities. So
yeah, and it is problematic. Imagine for the traditional Catholic, for instance, the FBI comes out with a memo. I think you sort of made an allusion to it earlier, that somehow traditional Catholicism or people who embrace traditional Catholicism are a threat to
domestic terrorism.
Yeah, right. So imagine you're using those words. Domestic terrorist sounds fairly ominous. Is a traditionalist Catholic a threat to the United States of America? Are moms who care about what their children are being taught in government schools domestic terrorists? Are they a literal threat to the United States government or to the educational system? And so it seems to me that the president is doing something that's totally appropriate, that he's trying to right a governmental overreach. Will that result in now a different kind of overreach? And I suspect, well, the pendulum is swinging. How far is it going to swing?
Pastor Gino, I want to ask you from the perspective of progressives, though, okay?
Right.
A lot of this is rooted in the ideology of oppressor versus oppressed. And the United States, dominated by white Christians, has oppressed other people, whether it's the racial oppression that took place in the South in the 60s, or the fact that we banned homosexuality. We did not allow gay people to get married. And so there was oppression against the LGBTQ. What we are doing is pushing back against the oppression that was instigated on us by white Christians. So isn't this justified to go out there and to right these historic wrongs? What are your thoughts on that line of thinking?
Well, yeah, from a progressive standpoint, the way that I would think about it is the progressives have already made the decision that sexual expression trumps all other freedoms. In other words, if sexual expression comes head to head with religious belief or rights of conscience, it is the normalization and then the celebration of sexual expression, and that from a cultural standpoint.
We lost him.
No,
he was getting into a good spot there,
yeah,
too.
I know.
We'll have to continue, and I'm waiting for Bill to jump in.
Yeah, I'm going to have to call him back here in a second.
We'll get him back here in a second. Hey, let me tell you about my friends over at the Art of Granite. Are you ready to transform your kitchen or bathroom into a stunning masterpiece? Look no further than the Art of Granite, your premier destination for exquisite granite, marble, and quartz countertops. For over 15 years, Mitch Floria, the owner of the Art of Granite, has been crafting and installing custom countertops, fireplaces, showers, and more. Their team of experts will guide you through the selection process, ensuring you find the perfect stone to match your style and budget. Visit their showroom in Golden or browse their online inventory at theartofgranite.com. Discover the endless possibilities for your home renovation project. Mention KNUS and you get a free bathroom countertop with a new kitchen countertops, or choose a free kitchen or bathroom sink with any countertop package. All you have to do is mention KNUS when you give them a call, okay? Don't wait. Transform your home into the oasis you deserve. Schedule your free consultation with Mitch today. Go to theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. Mention KNUS for these exclusive savings. Transform your kitchen or bathroom dreams into reality with the Art of Granite. All right, do we get Gino back? All right. Pastor Gino Geraci is joining us. All right, eradicating anti-Christian bias. You're saying progressives have prioritized sexual freedom over religious freedom. Continue.
Correct. And because they have prioritized sexual expression over religious freedom, then again, there's that tug, that pull. And so again, you talk about the weaponization of the government. And so the president's commission is going to anti-bias in government. This can't include anti-bias in the larger culture. So again, we're left with that kind of tension. The tension is what happens with religious speech in the public square. And so that's, to me, it argues that the president is absolutely correct, that government policies have restricted people of faith or people with religious convictions to express their faith publicly. And some Christians obviously are being disciplined, penalized. How else do you explain Lori Smith and 303
Creative, right?
Yeah, 303 Creative and Jack Phillips. Now, again, what is sort of interesting to me is why is Colorado sort of ground zero for this? Certainly, there are other issues that have been taking place all across the United States. But what is about this place and our circumstances where it becomes such a focus, such a problem?
And it's interesting how it's shifted, right? Think of the 90s in Colorado Springs and the power that Focus on the Family had, for instance, to be able to drive political agendas, to hold politicians accountable, to even get who they wanted to in office, versus now where you've had a complete shift with Tim Gill, Jared Polis, Pat Stryker, the others that have taken Colorado in a completely different direction. And it has now become the center point for some major U.S. Supreme Court battles on that conflict that exists. Pastor Gino, Geraci, Crosswalk 94.7. Can there be an America where you have gay marriage, people that want to get married in same-sex marriage, and pastors that want to teach what the Bible says on traditional marriage, and have a baker that gets to pick and choose who he serves, or the messages, not who he serves, but the messages that he wants to convey, because that was what the Supreme Court case was actually about. He wasn't denying them based upon their sexuality. He was denying them based upon the message that they wanted. And I've tried that with Jack Phillips, where I asked Jack to bake a Halloween cake and he declined.
Right.
I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I wrote part of the foreword of his book. He wouldn't bake me a Halloween cake. So can there be an America where those different values are able to coexist?
Well, let's, for purposes of discussion, say that America already exists and has always existed. Do you remember when the Dred Scott decision ruled that Black people weren't exactly human? There was a growing group of people who believed that slavery was okay. And the courts upheld the belief that slavery was okay. There was a horrible, terrible civil war that was fought in part to overturn that ruling. By the way, the Supreme Court ruling was never literally overturned by the Supreme Court. Obergefell versus Hodges legalized same-sex marriage. It already exists. It exists in the here and the now. So the big question then becomes, because it legally exists, does that require Christians or people of faith to believe that homosexual marriage is a positive good, a cultural good, a social good, or can they still maintain, hey, you know what? I believe what the Bible says about what it means to be human or what it means to be married. And then the government punish the Christian for retaining that view because they see it as a threat to that it's somehow limiting, or it is somehow creating a situation where LGBTQ people are oppressed, or that. So imagine a person says, it's not good enough that you just simply passively acknowledge that I have the right to do this. I am going to legally compel you to celebrate my position. And so
go ahead,
that's
Gino.
the tension.
That's
the tension.
Talking with Gino Geraci, he's the host of Crosswalk on 94.7 KRKS, our sister station here. We're talking Donald Trump's executive order to eradicate anti-Christian bias. Do you believe that this is necessary? Do you think it's important? Do you think that the Biden administration in particular was anti-Christian? He was a quote-unquote Catholic president. Do you think he was an anti-Christian in his leadership of the office of the presidency, or is this just a waste of time to feed the right-wing evangelical movement within the MAGA Republican Party? Want to hear from you. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. We'll continue with Pastor Gino Geraci. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KN.
At this hour, I'm Christina Awayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
President Donald Trump said he has fired the members of the Board of Visitors for each of the U.S. military service academies, saying, quote, "Our service academies have been infiltrated by woke leftist ideologies over the last 4 years. I have ordered the immediate dismissal of the Board of Visitors for the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Coast Guard. We will have the strongest military in history, and that begins by appointing new individuals to those boards. We must make the military academies great again." Each academy's Board of Visitors is tasked with influencing and maintaining the curriculum and culture at the schools. The United Nations says it has suspended its humanitarian operations in the stronghold of Yemen's Houthi rebels after they detained 8 more UN staffers. The decision affects the global response to one of the world's worst humanitarian disasters. The UN, in a statement, said the extraordinary decision to pause all operations and programs in northern Sada province was due to lack of necessary security conditions and guarantees. The rebels in recent months have detained dozens of UN staffers, as well as people associated with aid groups, civil society, and the once open U.S. Embassy. Border Patrol agents busted a human smuggling operation at a hotel in El Paso, Texas, according to Border Patrol Chief Michael W. Banks.
In Dallas, Christina Awayo, Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. This is News Talk 710 KNUS. Before we get back to the conversation with Gino, Geraci of Crosswalk, our sister station KRKS, I want to take a moment to talk to you about a business that has arrived here in Colorado that is changing the game. You've heard me talk about them like last week or so, Wound Care Associates of Colorado. They're doing things different because of a problem in the space that Jennifer, the owner and founder, saw based on a personal experience in her life. First, let's talk about Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Like, when you've got a problem, you don't just ignore the problem, do you? No, you want the problem fixed. And ignoring any sort of a chronic wound seems like it's not necessarily a big deal. We're talking diabetic ulcers, pressure sores, things like that. But it can turn into a very big deal quicker than you know, because that torn skin tissue is the perfect place for germs, dirt, bacteria, all that yuck to get inside of your body. That's why Jennifer started Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Her uncle had some comorbidities, diabetes, some neuropathy, discovered a small cut on one of his toes. He's dealing with all these other things. That didn't seem like the highest priority, so he let it go. And that was a huge mistake because an infection started. And by the time that he got medical treatment, the infection had spread so much they needed to take part of his foot. But that didn't fix the problem. After that, the infection had spread so deeply into his blood, tissue, and bones, he passed away 3 days later. By the time he sought medical care, it was too late. That's why you don't wait on these things. Use ColoradoWounded.com, ColoradoWounded.com today to get a hold of Wound Care Associates of Colorado, because they are changing the game here in our state. With Wound Care Associates of Colorado, you get that concierge come to your house, personalized medical treatment. Their wound care trained professionals come to your house. It's a wound certified nurse practitioner, so she can change orders and do everything that you need, but she gives you the comfort and care and the treatment you need in the privacy of your own home. No more transportation issues trying to get to the office. No more sitting around and waiting with all those sick people. As we've talked about that before, that happened with my aunt, where she was getting a chronic wound treated, and because of where she was getting it treated, she was exposed to further infection. And it was that further infection that created the problem, not her original wound. So this whole thing can go sideways quickly, but Wound Care Associates of Colorado does it differently. So you're going to be treated properly. You're going to get the concierge personalized treatment in your own home. They create a tailored custom care plan just for you. And most importantly, they want to reduce the risk of complications and promote faster healing because they want that wound to heal. They know what can happen if you just try to maintain that wound. They understand the danger to you and your family members. That's why you need to reach out today. Don't wait. ColoradoWound.com. ColoradoWound.com. If you or a loved one is struggling with a chronic wound, forgetting about it, avoiding it, putting the black electrical tape over the check engine light, that doesn't work. That doesn't fix anything. But it's different with Wound Care Associates of Colorado. They will fix the problem. They won't just maintain the problem, but you've got to do the first step. ColoradoWound.com. Reach out to them today. ColoradoWound.com. And when you do, tell them you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show, because it helps us out when you do. Thank you.
Right. Now, Bill, we're talking with Pastor Gino Geraci. He's the host of Crosswalk on our sister station, 94.7 KRKS, from 4 to 6 p.m. on weekday afternoons. Do you think, Bill, that there was anti-Christian bias in the Biden administration?
I'm not sold on that one, per se, given Biden's track record. Do I think that locally, some of the decisions here that were done and with respects to Jack Phillips were absolutely crazy? Yeah, but I'm not certain that there was a systemic anti-Christian bias per se. I'm just not sold on that one yet.
Pastor Gino, do you think you saw anti-Christian bias coming from the Biden administration?
Well, I think that we did see bias coming from the Biden administration, but there's a caveat, and I actually respect Bill's position, and let me tell you why. Because there is a kind of a problem, and let me tell you what the problem is. History is witness to the fact when the church relies on the state, the church becomes weaker and more controlled by the state. I think it was Dennis Prager who famously said, the larger the government, the smaller the citizen. I'm going to suggest to you that the more intrusive government is into church affairs, the less effective church becomes. So what do? We go all the way back to history. We remember that this president isn't the first president to form a task force about anti-Christian bias, and a positive one. President George Bush established the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partners in 2001. President Barack Obama continued with something similar, but he renamed it something else. So if we ask and we answer the question, is it a good idea for the government to both accept and encourage faith-based efforts to strengthen our nation? Is that a good thing? Is it a good thing to help churches and people of faith reinforce the family, reinforce morality, reinforce fill in the blank? Well, I think that has a merit. Faith-based efforts to strengthen our nation has merit. You'll remember that the United States Agency for International Aid has gone through the chopping block. Did you know that Samaritan's Purse receives about 5% of its funding from the United States Agency for International Development? They provide food, water, clothing, medical assistance, all kinds of different assistance. So again, as you look through this filter, and you ask, we go all the way back to your original question, Jeff, and that was, can this be an America that we can live in? De Tocqueville said, government by the people is not the order.
Oh no, we're losing you, Gino, a little bit. You're breaking up there. Can you go back to Tocqueville for us?
Oh, yeah. Tocqueville said, popular self-rule, government by the people, is not the ordinary tendency of things, but instead a rare and high achievement. He said, most societies in history have not attained it. The Americans were able to achieve it and sustain it because of their virtuous habits of public-spirited attention to the affairs of the community, and their religion was necessary to sustain those virtues and therefore necessary to America's claim to political greatness. So he sees a relationship.
I think he was going to say he sees a relationship between people of faith and the health of this society.
Yeah. Now, Gino Geraci, host of Crosswalk at 94.7 KRKS here on our sister station. What I want to ask you is, how do we walk that narrow line between encouraging people of faith and respecting people's faiths, but not adopting a state religion? One of the problems I have with someone that espouses that the government should reflect their religion, whatever their religious beliefs are, more is I see that going into a theocracy, that when we're going to choose one specific religion, and that one is going to then be the moral compass of the government, not of the people, but of the government, to me, that begins to crest into theocracy. How do we as Americans walk that narrow line?
I think the way we walk the line is we remember that this isn't a choice between my morality and your morality, but our morality. Again, do we have a shared morality? I go all the way back to your earlier conversation. Do most people think it's a good idea to sexually assault a child? We live in a culture and a society that still thinks that that is wrong, that it is wrong and that it should be punished. But imagine there's a shift. You talk about religion. We don't want your religion. But imagine if the religion is, under no circumstances are we going to prohibit or restrict sexual expression. And then there's a growing group of people that says, you know what? I think sexually assaulting a child is really wrong, and it has to be punished governmentally. And so again, it is that narrow road. It is, what is our shared morality? What is it that we all share? And where do those ideas come from? Obviously, I think we're a deeply entrenched Judeo-Christian society. There's a deep entrenchment of the idea that we're made in the image of God. And because we're made in the image of God, we have obligations to both God and each other. But imagine a growing group of people says, there's no God, and we have no obligations whatsoever to each other. How do you sustain the fabric of both a culture, a society, and then a civilization?
Ooh, that's a good one, Gino, because you start singing my song, because it dives right into John Locke and the idea of how we set up a functioning society and how we need to give up some own individual rights based on the social contract. But that social contract is also taken from the relative morality and belief system of the society it's going to govern. Yeah,
Gino Geraci, fantastic conversation. You can hear him every weekday from 4 to 6 p.m. on 94.7 The Word, our sister station, KRKS. We're going to continue to follow and cover Donald Trump's effort to eradicate anti-Christian bias. There's going to be a report coming in the next 100 days or so on each agency, and did they have anti-Christian bias? And
thank you so much, Gino,
Pastor
for the time
Gino,
today.
fantastic conversation. Thank you, sir.
That was a lot of fun.
Hey, you were welcome.
All right, we'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, it's been an absolutely fire show. If you missed any of it, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. Thank you, Trent England. Thank you, George Brauchler, Brandi, Bradley, Gino, Geraci, and all of our callers. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.